What if everything you've ever learned about stress, anxiety, and sleepless nights was completely backwards? What if the answers weren't in fighting your thoughts, silencing your mind, or fixing yourself, but in something far older, far simpler, something discovered 2,500 years ago by a man who gave up everything to understand human suffering? Welcome to the channel. What you're about to hear may sound impossible at first. There's a hidden collection of ancient stories, powerful teachings passed down from one heart to another that have helped thousands find deep healing rest, even when nothing else worked. Listeners have shared how their minds slowed for the first time in years. Some say their anxiety melted away. Others don't even remember falling asleep, only waking up with a stillness they'd forgotten was possible. But these aren't ordinary bedtime stories. They're doorways into a peace that's already inside you, a peace that has been patiently waiting beneath all the noise, fear, and exhaustion. In the next 3 hours, you'll hear how a ruthless killer became the Buddha's most trusted disciple, how a grieving mother found freedom through a bowl of mustard seeds, and how 3 simple words from the Buddha stopped a man from destroying his entire family in a moment of rage. And as these stories unfold, something within you may begin to soften. You don't need to force it. You don't even need to stay awake. The teachings will find you, even in your dreams. If you feel called, share in the comments where you're listening from. Are you lying awake in Tokyo, staring at the ceiling? Curled beneath your blanket into exes, trying to escape the weight of the day? Or drifting off in a quiet corner of New Jersey at 2 a.m.? There's something beautiful in knowing we're all here, together, seeking peace, letting go, breathing through the noise of a restless world. So now, grab your softest blanket, dim the lights, let the outside world fade into silence. For the next 3 hours, you don't need to fix anything. You don't need to fight your thoughts. You don't even need to stay awake. Just listen. Let these ancient Zen and Buddhist stories do what they were meant to do. Gently, word by word, guide you home to the peace that was never lost, only forgotten. This is what the Buddha knew, and tonight, it's yours too. There are stories that do not begin with a bang, but with a breath, not with noise, but with quiet, not with answers, but with a question that floats like a feather down an unseen river of thought. This is one of those stories. Long ago, when the Blessed One still walked upon the earth with bare feet and eyes that held galaxies of stillness, a question arose in the heart of his closest companion, Ananda. The devoted attendant of the Buddha was a man of extraordinary memory and great affection. His mind was sharp like a well-polished blade, and yet his heart was soft as morning dew upon a lotus petal. He followed the Buddha not out of duty, but out of love of brotherly, spiritual devotion that transcended even the craving for enlightenment. But even the most sincere hearts can tremble, and even those closest to wisdom can sometimes be furthest from peace. The question in Ananda's heart one morning, as birds stitched songs across the blue cloth of the sky, and the sun rose like a golden prayer over the horizon. Ananda sat beside the Blessed One, beneath a flowering Bodhi tree. His mind was restless, though the forest was still. Ananda's thoughts were many. He had listened to the Buddha teach the 4 noble truths, witnessed the calming power of mindfulness, and repeated countless sutras by heart. And yet, he did not feel free. The question whispered like a hidden stream behind his smile. Why? Dear teacher, even after hearing your teachings, even after memorizing your sermons and bathing in your silence, does my mind still stir like leaves in the wind? The Buddha looked at Ananda gently, without surprise. He said nothing for a long time, and in that silence, Ananda could feel the vastness of something beyond speech. Finally, the Buddha spoke. Ananda, let me tell you a story, not a grand tale of gods or heavens, just a small story about a bowl. The bowl of silence there was once a village, quiet and unseen, nestled between rice fields and mountain shadows. In that village lived an old potter named Kema. He was known for crafting bowls so perfect They held not just water, but wonder. People said his bowls kept water cooler in the summer and warmer in the cold. But there was one bowl that was never sold. It was not glazed in gold or painted with flowers. It was simple clay, shaped by humble hands fired in patience. And set aside on a high wooden shelf in the corner of his hut, Kema called it the bowl of silence. Whenever storms raged in his heart, grief, anger, longing, he would sit beside this bowl and simply listen. No sound came from it, but in that silence, he always found peace. Once, a curious monk visited the village and asked the potter, "What magic rests in this bowl, old man, that it can calm you so deeply?" Kema smiled and replied, "The bowl contains nothing but space, but I do not go to it for answers. I go to it to remember that I, too, am like this bowl when empty. I am full." Returning to emptiness, the Buddha looked into Ananda's eyes and continued, "You fill your mind with teachings, beloved Ananda. You remember my words better than anyone, but the cup of your being is brimming, and so it cannot receive. You must sit with your own bowl of silence, not the silence of speechless lips, but the silence that listens, the silence that allows things to arise and pass without grasping them." Ananda bowed his head, ashamed. "I have mistaken memory for wisdom, Lord." But the Buddha's face softened like dawn through mist. "No, Ananda. You have mistaken noise for presence. It is a mistake all minds make." And then he said something Ananda would never forget. "Words point the way, but peace is not in the finger that points. It is in the space to which it points, and that space is silence." The practice of the bowl that night, Ananda walked alone to the edge of the monastery gardens. He found a stone basin used for collecting rainwater. Moonlight shimmered upon its surface, unmoved, unbroken. He sat and he did. Nothing, not meditation with a goal, not breath with effort. He sat with the bowl of his own being. He noticed the voices that rose. "I should be doing more. I need to understand. I must," he noticed, but did not follow, like watching ripples on the water settle after a stone has been thrown. And as the night deepened, he began to see something that cannot be seen by eyes. He saw the space between thoughts. He felt the peace between desires. He recognized the truth between the teachings. It was not in the words, but in the silence they arose from, the language beyond sounding the following days. The other monks began to notice a change in Ananda. He smiled less, but with more warmth, spoke less, but his words carried a quiet authority. He no longer quoted the Buddha as often, but when he did, it felt like the words grew from him, not merely passed through him. The Buddha, watching quietly from afar, once remarked to Rahula, "Do you see your uncle Ananda? He has begun to hear." Rahula asked, "Hear what, Blessed One?" And the Buddha said, "He has begun to hear the Dharma in the space between words." The great teachings are not just what is spoken, but what remains when all speaking stops. The bowl within you, and now, dear listener, this teaching has floated through time and space and found its way to you. Perhaps you too have studied much, listened much, read many books, followed many paths. Perhaps you have tried to solve your mind, the way a carpenter solves a broken chair. But the peace you seek is not another plank or nail. It is the pause, the spaciousen, the bowl. You too can sit beside the bowl of silence. You don't need a monastery. You don't need a perfect teacher. You don't need to achieve some mythical state. You only need to return to the stillness already present in you, to sit beside the bowl of your own presence and do nothing, nothing but listen. A guided moment of stillness, so let us end not with more words, but with a moment of shared silence. Sit. If you can, let your body be the clay bowl. Let your breath be the quiet wind that passes through a temple garden, and let your mind open not to more thoughts, but to the space behind them. Notice the sounds around you, the soft hum of life. Now, notice the silence that holds those sounds. Notice the thoughts in your mind, the flickers of emotion. Now, Notice the stillness behind them. Stay there for 10 seconds, for a minute, for however long you wish. This is the bowl of silence, and you are already holding it. Final blessing, may you walk with the patience of the potter. May your life become a vessel for peace, not by doing more, but by being more spacious. And when the storms come, as they always will, may you remember the bowl. May you remember that silence is not emptiness. Silence is the fullness of being, untouched. Silence is the presence that does not need to explain itself. This is the peace that lives within you. Not far, not hidden, but always waiting like a bowl on a quiet shelf, waiting for you to return. Chapter 2. Rahula and the mirror of mind. The moonlight does not seek to reflect, yet it finds itself in every still pond. So too, the mind does not need to force clarity. When it becomes still, it reflects the truth naturally. Welcome back, dear traveler. Tonight, we walk beside a young monk, a seeker of silence, a questioner of thought, a boy who once called the Buddha father and who now walks the same path of awakening. His name is Rahula, and his journey will not be through mountains or deserts, but into the ever-shifting terrain of the mind itself. Let your breath soften. Let the warmth of this story flow into your heart like a slow river. Here begins Chapter 2. Rahula and the mirror of mind. The young seeker, Hula, was not just the Buddha's son, he was his disciple, his student, his Miradot. As a child, Rahula had longed for the father who had left his royal home in search of truth. And when that truth returned in the form of a monk robed in saffron and silence, Rahula too chose to leave the palace behind. He was still a boy when he joined the Sangha. Curious, eager, sometimes mischievous, as young ones can be when they do not yet understand the depth of the path. And yet, he listened, he watched, and inside him grew a silent yearning, not just to follow in the Buddha's footsteps, but to see what his father truly saw. One evening, as twilight painted the sky with strokes of soft golden ash, Rahula sat outside the meditation hall with a restless heart. He had questions that words could not hold, not questions for answers, but questions like doors. Why does the mind wander when I try to still it? Why do I see so many versions of myself in thought, yet none feel real? What is the true self beneath all this noise? The Buddha, sensing Rahula's restlessness, sat beside him without a word, and for a while they watched the silence stretch across the land. Then the Buddha turned to his son and asked gently, "Rahula, have you ever looked into a clear mirror?" The boy nodded. "And what do you see?" "My face," Rahula replied. "When your face is calm, the mirror shows calm. When it is joyful, it shows joy. When troubled, it reflects that too. But is the mirror ever changed by what it reflects?" Rahula was quiet. "No, father. The mirror reflects but remains unchanged." The Buddha smiled. "So too is the mind, Rahula. Its nature is like a mirror. It only appears disturbed when it reflects what is placed before it. But in truth, it remains untainted, luminous, and still." The practice of the mirror in the days that followed, Rahula was given a simple practice. Every morning before speaking or walking or eating, he was to sit before a basin of still water. The Buddha had instructed, "Look into the water as if looking into your own mind. Ask yourself, is my speech today true and kind? Are my actions today peaceful and mindful? Are my thoughts today honest and free from harm?" This, Rahula, is the mirror of the mind. And so he did. At first, Rahula saw only a boy's face, a face he sometimes didn't recognize, at times proud, at times afraid, sometimes pretending to be wise, other times lost in the whirlpool of doubt. But slowly, like silt settling at the bottom of a river, something began to clear. Within him, he began to see that the mirror did not lie, that when anger arose, it showed. When pride crept in, it was visible. When compassion bloomed, his whole being softened. He realized that no effort could force the water to stay still, but his awareness could gently wait for the ripples to calm. The visitor from the past one morning, Rahula's stillness was disturbed. By an unexpected visitor, his mother Yasodhara had come to see him. She had raised him in the palace, in the echo of a man who had left behind wife, child, and kingdom to seek enlightenment. She had loved him silently and strongly, not through clinging, but through the deep dignity of someone who knows when to release. They spoke few words. She looked into her son's eyes and saw the same gaze as the Buddha, calm, piercing, gentle. She asked him, "Are you at peace?" Rahula hesitated. Then he replied, "I am learning to see the mind without turning away. Some days, I see a storm. Other days, a lotus. But the mirror is teaching me not to judge what appears, only to keep watching with love." Yasodhara wept silently, not from sorrow, not from joy, but from recognition. The child she had once cradled was now a mirror, himself reflecting the light of truth with no need to possess it. The three illusions of reflection. One evening, Rahula approached the Buddha and shared his insight. "Father, I've noticed 3 illusions that arise in the mirror of the mind." The Buddha listened. Rahula continued, "First, there is identification. I see a thought or emotion and say, 'This is me,' but it's just a reflection passing, shifting, not the whole truth. Second, there is aversion. When I see anger or fear, I want to push it away, but pushing only stirs the water more. Third, there is attachment to reflection. When I see peace or joy, I want to hold it forever, but even that creates disturbance." The Buddha smiled gently. These 3 identification, aversion, and attachment are the roots of all suffering. To see them is the beginning of freedom. The mirror breaks one day. Rahula's bowl of water was accidentally knocked over. The mirror shattered. No reflection, no surface, only emptiness. At first, he felt lost. Then he sat in stillness, closed his eyes, and turned the mirror inward. There, in the depth beyond images and names, he saw not a reflection, but presence, not the mind, but the watcher of the mind, not the thought, but the silence between thoughts. And in that moment, he laughed, softly, gratefully, because the mirror was never outside. It had always lived within. The true practice Rahula would go on to become one of the wisest monks in the Sangha. His understanding of the mind's reflection was so profound that the Buddha once told him, "Rahula, be like a mirror. Show the truth without resistance. Receive without clinging. Reflect with compassion. And always return to stillness." This became his practice whenever someone wronged him. He watched the mind's reaction arise, but did not become it. Whenever pride tempted him, he remembered that even the clearest reflection can be clouded by ego's breath. Whenever peace filled him, he simply bowed, knowing it too was a visitor in the mirror. And over time, Rahula's presence became like the moon on water, clear, calm, untouchable, yet able to touch all who came near. Closing reflections. Dear listener, what do you see? When you look into your own mind, do not be afraid of the ripples. They are only surface dances. The true depth remains untouched. You are not your thoughts, not your emotions, not even your beliefs. You are the watcher, the presence, the silent witness in which all things appear and disappear. Just like Rahula, you can train yourself not to fix the mind, but to observe it, not to control the water, but to allow it to clear on its own. Let your breath soften. Let your awareness widen. Tonight, the moon is rising in your inner sky. Let its silver light reflect in the mirror of your mind. May you see clearly, may you remain still, and may you always remember, the peace that lives within you is not something to be created, but simply remembered, like a reflection waiting in still water. Chapter 3. Kassapa and the Fire of Desire in the Kingdom of Magadha. When the air was thick with the scent of jasmine, and the monsoons had just begun to whisper across the land, there lived a fire dancer named Kassapa. with a body as fluid as the wind and eyes that mirrored flickering flames. Kassapa danced barefoot over burning coals and spun torches in the dead of night. Crowds from distant villages gathered to witness his performances. Mesmerized by the illusion of control, he displayed commanding fire without being consumed. But when the crowds dispersed and the torches were extinguished, Kassapa sat alone in his chamber, trembling, not from the burn of fire, but from a gnawing ache inside his heart, a craving, a hunger that fire could not warm, nor fame could soothe. He had tasted admiration, he had savored applause, but it vanished each night like the smoke that drifted. From his torches, a deep hollowness echoed within him, louder with each performance. One evening, after performing for the king's court and receiving a garland of gold coins and silks, Kassapa sat under a neem tree outside the city. He stared at the stars. Something in him stirred a longing beyond pleasure. The fire that once thrilled him now tormented him. The fuel was running out. He had heard whispers of a sage man who walked barefoot through forests, who neither sought fame nor feared obscurity, a man called the Buddha, a man who had faced desire and walked beyond its flames. Kassapa left the city under moonlight. He carried nothing but a cloth bag and a fading question in his heart. Is there peace beyond the fire of desire? The meeting Kassapa found the Buddha meditating near the banks of the Naranjana River, where the breeze carried the scent of wild grass and the murmur of flowing water offered a song more ancient than fire. The Buddha opened his eyes slowly, as if he were returning from a realm beyond thought. His gaze was still and vast. Kassapa bowed low. "Master," he said, "I am a fire dancer. I command flames before men's eyes. But there is a fire inside me I cannot master." The Buddha nodded, as if he had seen this fire countless times. "You carry a flame that does not warm but consumes." Kassapa lowered his head. "I have lived by desire. I desired praise, beauty, love, thrill. But now the flames that once lit my world threaten to devour it. How do I extinguish the fire?" The Buddha motioned for him to sit. The ground was warm beneath them. The silence wrapped around them like a cloak, and so began the teaching. "The three poisons and the inner fire, the fire you speak of," said the Buddha, "is not your enemy. Fire exists in all beings. But when it feeds on ignorance, it becomes suffering." Kassapa listened intently. "There are three fires, Kassapa," the Buddha continued: "greed, hatred, and delusion. Together, they are the roots of all suffering. They burn unseen, but fiercely in the heart." Kassapa's fingers twitched unconsciously, as if still holding the fire stick. "I have fed all three. I have lusted, envied, and lied to keep my fame." The Buddha nodded. "You are not alone. All beings who are bound by samsara, this cycle of birth and death, burn with these poisons. But the fire can be transformed. How?" asked Kassapa. "By seeing it clearly." Seeing the fire clearly, the Buddha told Kassapa to close his eyes. "Observe the fire within," he instructed. "Not with fear, not with shame, just observe." Kassapa breathed slowly. At first, he saw only darkness. But then memories flickered. The heat of desire for a courtesan's gaze, the bitterness he felt when a younger performer stole the spotlight, the thrill of conquering yet another audience. Each memory flamed before him, not as scenes of pride, but as sparks of suffering. "They rise and fall," Kassapa whispered. "Yes," said the Buddha. "This is the nature of craving. It promises permanence, but delivers only loss." The Buddha paused and placed a hand on the earth beside him. Fire, when seen clearly, loses its grip. When you witness your desire instead of becoming it, you begin to walk free. The story of the moth and the flame. The Buddha shared a parable. A moth, drawn to the glow of a lamp, circles closer and closer. It believes the light will grant it bliss, but in touching the flame, it is destroyed. So too does the unwise mind chase desire, believing it to be salvation, unaware that it leads to suffering. Kassapa was silent for a long time. "Been the moth," he said finally. Each applause was the glow, each embraced the heat, but none satisfied for long. The Buddha's voice was soft, like rain on leaves. "To seek is natural, but to see clearly what we seek, this is wisdom. Desire is not the enemy." The Buddha did not command Kassapa to renounce all desire. He taught him to discern. "There are two kinds of desire," he said. Tanha, Chandawai's aspiration. Tanha is craving that leads to clinging. It demands more, always more. It says, "Only when I have this will I be happy." But Chanda, the Buddha continued, is the desire for understanding, for peace, for awakening. It is a flame that illuminates, not burns. Kassapa leaned forward, so the fire can guide. Buddha smiled. "Yes, when your desire arises from love, compassion, and truth, it ceases to harm. It becomes a tool, not a tormentor." Kassapa's practice begins from that day. Kassapa did not return to the city. He stayed with the Sangha, the community of monks, under the open skies. At dawn, he swept the monastery paths. At noon, he ate a single bowl of rice. At night, he meditated beside the river. The fire within him did not disappear overnight, but now he watched it. When jealousy arose, he greeted it like an old companion. When lust appeared, he observed it without feeding it. When pride whispered, he smiled and let it pass. Over time, the flames dimmed, not extinguished, but tamed. He did not lose passion. He found clarity, and in that clarity, he discovered a deeper fire. Not the fire of wanting, but the fire of awakening. A new dance 1 year later, a festival was held in a nearby village. Villagers, recognizing Kassapa, begged him to perform. He hesitated, unsure. Would this awaken the old fire? The Buddha, who had observed Kassapa's transformation, simply said, "Dance, but do not burn." And so, that night, under starlight, Kassapa danced again. But this time, his steps were not to please. His flames were not to dazzle. He danced to express freedom as the torches spun in the air. The crowd fell silent. There was something different. No arrogance, no hunger-only presence. He moved like the wind, gentle, yet wild. He danced as if he were bowing to the fire, not mastering it. The crowd wept, not from awe, but from stillness. The fire of desire becomes light after the performance. A young boy approached Kassapa. Kassapa knelt beside him and whispered, "I no longer dance to fill the emptiness. I dance because I am full." The fire of desire had become the fire of awareness. Closing. Reflection. Kassapa's journey is the journey of us all in our own lives. We chase pleasures, recognition, relationships, and success, believing each will finally extinguish the ache within us. But what if the fire we run from can become the light we walk by? The teachings of the Buddha do not shame desire, they illuminate it. When we see our craving for what it truly is, not a flaw, but a signpost, we begin to walk the path of freedom. Desire is not the problem. Unconscious desire is, the Buddha said. Just as a fire burns with fuel, so does suffering burn with craving. But when the fuel is gone, the fire goes out, and what remains is peace. Kassapa learned this not in words, but through watching the fire within. So can we. When you feel the pull of desire, pause, breathe, watch, and remember, you are not the flame. You are the space in which it flickers. You are the witness, and within that witnessing, peace lives. The moonlight fell gently through the old Bodhi trees, casting pale silver shadows upon the earth. In the distance, the soft rustle of leaves echoed like the whisper of ancient truths. The air was heavy with peace, and in that sacred silence, an old figure walked slowly toward the monastery gates. It was Ananda, now gray-haired, carrying a bowl of rice and herbs. Behind him trailed a much older figure, not a monk, not a man, but a horse, Canthaca. the same white stallion who had carried Prince Siddhartha out of the palace gates so many years ago. On that fateful night, when the young prince renounced his life of royalty and began his spiritual journey. Though decades had passed, Kanthuka's spirit had never faded from the teachings. But Kanthuka was old now. His hooves soft, his breath shallow. His body was worn thin from years of pilgrimage, walking beside monks, carrying offerings, standing in silent witness to the unfolding Dharma. And this would be his final lesson. The loyal companion who watched the world change long ago, before Siddhartha became the Buddha. Kanthuka was not merely a horse. He was a silent witness to all the transitions of the prince's life victories. Doubts, contemplations, Kanthuka had carried the prince in triumph and also in retreat. When Siddhartha left the palace under the veil of darkness, it was Kanthuka who bore the weight not just of a man, but of destiny. When Siddhartha dismounted that final time and gave Kanthuka a final pat, whispering gratitude and goodbye, legend says Kanthuka bowed not as an animal but as one who understood. His master was not just leaving home, he was walking into truth. Since that night, Kanthuka had not returned to the palace. Instead, he remained close to the monastic paths, drawn to the peace of Sangha, grazing near the monasteries and resting under trees where sermons were delivered. It was as if even the wind carried the Buddha's voice to his ears. Kanthuka had become a silent practitioner of the Dharma. The final pilgrimage now, as Kanthuka grew feeble, he walked toward the monastery once more one final time. He knew, in that inexplicable way, animals sense what humans often forget. He felt the ending nearing, not as fear, but as return, as home. He remembered how the Buddha once said, even animals can reach peace when their hearts are free from clinging. As the two entered the monastery garden, younger monks came forward to greet them. Some brought fruit, others simply bowed. None spoke. They knew this was not a moment for words. They laid out a bed of grass and petals. Kanthuka knelt. His breath, though shallow, was steady. His eyes reflected not pain, but peace. A circle of monks, a lesson of loyalty and Ananda, gathered the monks. As the moon climbed high, he spoke. Brothers, tonight we witness a rare and final lesson. This is not merely an animal. This is a being who served the Bodhisattva, not through words, but through unwavering presence. Let us remember what the Buddha taught, that peace is not for humans alone, but for all sentient beings who let go of attachment and live in harmony. A young monk asked Venerable Ananda, how can a horse understand the Dharma? Ananda looked down at Kanthuka and smiled. Not through scriptures, not through reasoning, but through action, through silence, through loyalty without self. This horse did not ask for reward, recognition, or comfort. He carried suffering and let it go without clinging. That, too, is a path to awakening. The fire of ego and the calm of the beast. In earlier years, the Buddha once told a story about the ego of humans and the purity of animals. A proud man once asked me if enlightenment is only for the learned, for those who know scripture. I told him, no, enlightenment belongs to those who unlearn pride, who dwell in humility, who do not see themselves as higher or lower. Even a loyal beast, pure of heart, can dwell in more peace than a man obsessed with knowledge but without wisdom. Kanthuka, in his silence, had embodied this. What the loyal horse teaches us, the monk sat in meditation around Kanthuka, breathing slowly, absorbing the wisdom of his presence. Here was a life that had not fought for status, had not asked, why me? In the face of discomfort, had not clung to the palace or longed to return. Instead, he had followed, walked, rested, served, and now he was letting go without resistance. As his breath slowed, Ananda whispered, you taught without words. You served without asking. You bowed without being commanded. And now, dear Kanthuka, you return to the great silence, the same stillness that the Buddha himself entered. And in that silence, Kanthaka's breath came to stillness, but the peace that radiated from his body filled the garden like incense. Beyond death, the spirit of Dharma in all beings that night. A gentle wind passed through the monastery. The Bodhi leaves rustled like a soft chant. The moon shimmered with reverence, and Ananda said to the monks, "Never forget, the path to peace is not bound by form, not limited to monks or nuns. Even a beast of burden, through loyalty and quiet, love can attain a noble rebirth." The Buddha did not teach us to seek enlightenment in complexity. He showed us that even in simplicity there is liberation. Kanthaka's body was wrapped in white cloth and laid to rest beneath a tree. A simple stone marked the spot. No title, no name, just a carved symbol, the Buddha's footprint. For it was not about remembering a horse, it was about remembering what lives quietly inside us, all the capacity to serve, to let go, and to die without regret. Closing meditation, the way of silent service now. Let us sit together. Let your breath flow gently in and out. Feel your body resting like a loyal friend to your own mind. Inhale slowly and release. Ask nothing, expect nothing, simply be present. Can you be like Kanthaka, walking alongside the journey of your life without resistance, letting go of praise or blame, not grasping for answers, but simply showing up, loyal to the present moment? Inhale again. Feel the ground below you like the petals beneath the old horse. Exhale gently. Allow your thoughts to quiet, like hoofbeats fading into silence. Closing words. The legacy of Kanthakapis does not come to the loud. It does not arrive in the hands of the clever. It lives in the heart of those who walk silently, who bow gently, and who give without the need to receive. The peace that lives within you has always been there, quiet as Kanthaka. Even now, he gallops through the wind of Dharma, his spirit a whisper reminding you, you do not need to be perfect, to be pure. You only need to be present. Let go, bow softly, and walk on. Chapter 5. The abundance found in giving, in the cool shadow of an ancient banyan tree, beneath whose roots monks had once meditated and kings had once wept. A small group of pilgrims gathered to hear the final teaching of the day. The air was still. A single breeze stirred the leaves, as if nature itself had paused to listen. The elder monk, robed in the quiet color of river stones, sat cross-legged on the warm earth. His voice rose not to command attention, but to harmonize with the silence. "You came to learn peace," he began. "But peace is not something you take. Peace is something you give away again and again until you realize you never lost it." And so began the story of the abundance found in giving, the parable of the empty bowl once. During the time of the Buddha, a wealthy merchant approached the Blessed One. He was adorned in fine silks, his chariot drawn by horses well-fed and shining. He bowed with stiff formality and asked, "Master, I have wealth beyond measure, but I feel poor inside. I give offerings to the temple, I sponsor rituals, but still I remain unsatisfied. Why?" The Buddha looked at him with eyes as still as a moonlit pond. Then he gestured to Ananda, his attendant. To bring him a clay bowl, the Buddha held the bowl out to the merchant. "Fill this," he said. The merchant blinked with what? "Lord, whatever you think will make it full," the Buddha replied. The merchant began to pour gold coins into the bowl. They clinked and glimmered, a mountain of metal and desire. "Now," said the Buddha, "touch your heart. Is it full?" The merchant grew quiet. "No," he said. The Buddha turned the bowl upside down. The coins tumbled onto the earth with a sound that echoed emptiness. "Try again," said the Buddha, "but this time, fill it with something that cannot be counted." So the merchant knelt and placed a single lotus petal into the bowl, then a prayer, then a vow to forgive his brother, then an offering to the poor. He closed his eyes and wept. "This," said the Buddha, "is the fullness of giving, not in quantity, but in release. You do not give to receive. You give to remember that you are not poor. The illusion of lack. Modern minds are trained in the arithmetic of scarcity. We count our coins, hoard our hours, guard our emotional energy like treasure behind locked gates. We say things like, I can't give my time right now. I need to take care of myself first. If I give too much, they'll take advantage. But giving, in its deepest spiritual form, is not about depletion. It is about reuniting with the wholeness of life. It's not about what you give, it's about who you become in the act of giving. In Buddhism, this is DNA, the first of the 10 perfections. Promise, it is not simply charity. It is the path of liberation through generosity. When you give freely, without expectation, without attachment, you dissolve the ego that separates giver from receiver. You do not become poor through giving. You become vast. The story of the golden deer. A forest untouched by time, there lived a golden deer. His coat shimmered like sunlight through honey, and his presence brought peace to all who beheld him. One day, a hunter came into the forest. Desperate to feed his family, he saw the golden deer and aimed his bow. But before he could release the arrow, the deer turned and walked toward him, unafraid. The hunter dropped his weapon in shock. Why do you not run? He asked. The deer bowed his head. Because I have more than you, the hunter blinked. You? You have nothing but a forest, the deer replied. I have peace. I have no fear. I sleep under the stars, drink from the river, and harm no creature. I have no enemies. You, however, are afraid. You chase and kill to silence your hunger, but the hunger never leaves you. You are always lacking. That is true poverty. Then the deer knelt and offered himself. If my body will feed your family, then take it. May my flesh become your freedom. The hunter wept and dropped to his knees. No, he said, I cannot take from one who has already given me so much. He walked away, fed not by meat, but by the truth of abundance. What the heart gives, the heart keeps. There is a teaching in the Dhammapada. The fragrance of virtue travels against the wind. A generous heart is never forgotten. When you give, with joy, without attachment, that action becomes a seed. It may not sprout in the form you expect, but it will blossom somewhere, perhaps in the smile of a stranger, the release of an old burden, or the serenity of your own sleep. The universe remembers giving. It is not transactional. It is transformational. A spoon of rice shared with a hungry soul echoes through lifetimes. A word of comfort, spoken with presence, becomes a bridge between hearts. The Zen monk and the robber. A Zen monk once lived in a mountain hut with no possessions but a blanket, a teacup, and a candle. One night, a robber burst in, blade raised. Give me everything you have, he shouted. The monk looked around the empty room and chuckled softly. You've come a long way for nothing, he said. But at least take my blanket. The night is cold. The robber, confused, took the blanket and fled. Later, sitting alone in the moonlight, the monk whispered, Poor man, I wish I could have given him this beautiful moon. This is the way of giving, not bound by things, but by spirit. The monk had lost his blanket, but not his peace. The robber had gained a possession, but remained in poverty. Real giving cannot be stolen, because it is not a loss, it is a radiance. Practice the small gifts. You do not need wealth to give abundantly. Some of the most powerful offerings are invisible. Attention given fully, like still water reflecting another's soul. Kindness, not just politeness, but gentle understanding. Forgiveness, the gift of freedom for yourself and others. Presence, your undivided now, offered as a sacred space. Try this very day to give one thing you usually guard. Offer your smile to someone who is alone. Give your silence to someone who is grieving. Place your phone down and offer your complete presence to someone you love. Give without needing to be noticed. Give as the sun gives to all. Without condition, letting go to receive. There is an old saying in Zen: to receive, open your hand; to awaken, Open your heart. If your fists are closed clutching money, time, pride, grudges you cannot receive the flow of life. But when you let go, you realize that you were never empty. In that letting go, abundance arise, not from what enters your hand, but from what is freed within your heart. Closing reflection, the true gift. The elder monk, finishing his story beneath the banyan tree, fell silent for a long while. Then he looked into the eyes of each listener. The greatest gift is not gold, not time, not words. It is you, your presence, your forgiveness, your understanding. It is your peace handed gently to another soul. He bowed, and you will discover that nothing was ever missing. And in the hush that followed, the pilgrims did not clap or cry or chant. They simply breathed in, out, and in that sacred stillness, they realized they were already whole. They were already free. They had already received. Introduction: there is a river that runs through all things. It does not fight. It does not strive. It simply flows. Over rock and under sky, through storm and silence. The river carries everything: joy, sorrow, birth, death, fear, love. And what if peace is not found by clinging to the banks, but by surrendering to this current? In this chapter, we journey with a young novice monk named Sona, who one day finds himself standing at the edge of a wide, ancient river. What begins as a simple task becomes a deep spiritual encounter, leading to one of the most enduring metaphors in Buddhist teaching, the way of the river. This is the story of letting go, of discovering that peace is not something you hold, but something you enter. So find a quiet space, breathe in gently, and allow yourself to drift into this river of stillness, where Buddhist wisdom flows like water, carrying all things. Part 1: The weight of resistance in the quiet monastery of Amaravati. Nestled beside a wide river that shimmered like silk beneath the morning sun, lived a boy named Sona. He was young, no older than 15, yet his eyes were shadowed with worry far beyond his years. He had come to the monastery seeking relief from grief, from fear, from the constant restlessness that throbbed like a second heartbeat inside him. Master Tithio, the elder monk who presided over the monastery, had taken Sona under his wing. Yet for many moons, Sona had struggled to find peace. He woke often in the middle of the night, startled by dreams of being pulled underwater. In meditation, his thoughts buzzed like swarms of flies. He gripped tightly to every mistake, every imperfection, as if trying to strangle his way into enlightenment. One morning, the master called Sona to his side and handed him an empty bucket. "There is a great river at the foot of this mountain. Bring back water from its edge, not from the well, not from the temple basin, but directly from the river. And do not return until you have truly seen it." Sona bowed, though he did not understand. What was there to see in water? Yet something in the master's voice was final, firm as stone and soft as wind. And so he descended. Part 2: Meeting the river. Sona stood at the riverbank, bucket in hand, unsure of what to look for. The water danced with sunlight, moving in gentle ripples. It gurgled softly against the rocks, as if speaking a language older than words. He bent down to fill the bucket. And just as the water crested the rim, he paused. He watched. The current was never still. Even the leaves that had fallen into the water did not resist. They spun and twirled in the current like tiny monks bowing to the temple of the earth. Why did it feel like the river was speaking to him? For hours he watched. He saw how the water curved around obstacles, never fighting the rocks, only flowing past them. He saw how the deepest parts of the river were also the stillest, while the surface shimmered with activity. The bottom moved with silence. He thought of his own mind, how it thrashed, resisted, tried to conquer itself. His meditation was like trying to dam a river with his bare hands. For the first time, Sona realized he was afraid of letting go. Part 3: the leaf and the current the next day. Sona returned to the river with no bucket. Instead, he brought a single dried leaf. He knelt by the water and gently set it on the surface. At first, the leaf spun in place. Then slowly, the current took it. It drifted forward over pebbles, around twigs, sometimes catching on the side, but always moving. And Sona whispered to himself, "That is the mind. That is me." He watched the leaf disappear into the curve of the river. A tear welled in his eye, not from sadness, but from a strange, sudden relief. He had been clinging to perfection, to stillness, to the fantasy that peace was the absence of motion, but here, the river flowed with motion, with sound, and yet it carried no anxiety. It simply carried part. 4. The conversation with Master Tathyoin. He returned to the monastery. He found Master Tathyo seated beneath the Bodhi tree. Without words, Sona set down the bucket still empty and sat beside the master. The old monk looked at the boy and smiled. "You saw it," he said. "I did," Sona whispered. "What did you see?" Sona replied, "I saw that peace does not mean stopping the current. It means trusting it. I saw that I am not the riverbank. I am the river." Master Tathyo nodded, and Sona hesitated. "I saw that even pain, even fear, are part of the current. I don't have to resist them. I only need to float." The master placed a hand gently on Sona's back. "Then your training begins." Sona looked up, startled. "Begins?" "Yes," said the master. "The moment you stop trying to control the river, you become it." Part 5. Lessons of the river. In the months that followed, Sona meditated not by fighting his thoughts, but by watching them flow. He sat near the river often, not to gather water, but to gather understanding. He began to notice joy was like the sparkle of sunlight on the surface. Anger was like the current surging after rainfast, but temporary. Sadness was the deep part of the river, slow but sacred. Love was the way water gave itself freely to every shore. Even death, which had once terrified him, now felt like the leaf finally sinking into the bottom, becoming part of the stillness beneath all things. He learned not to cling to the moments, nor push them away. He floated. Part 6. The illusion of control. One day, a traveler visited the monastery. Troubled and full of pride, he asked to speak with Master Tathyo and boasted, "I have built a dam in my village to stop the floods. I have built walls too. Keep out the wild. I have built a mind that resists all chaos. Is that not the way to peace?" Master Tathyo pointed to Sona and said, "Ask him." The traveler turned to the young monk, and Sona, calm and clear as a mountain lake, replied, "When you dam the river, the water rises. It seems calm at first, but it swells in silence until one day it breaks. Then comes the flood. But when you trust the river, when you move with it, the water carries you. Peace is not stillness through force. Peace is motion through surrender." The traveler said nothing and left. Some walls must fall before wisdom can enter. Part 7. The river within years. Past Sona became a teacher himself, and when novices asked him what peace was, he would lead them to the river and say, "Close your eyes. Now listen. The sound you hear is the same sound inside you. You too are a river. Don't fear your feelings. Don't block your grief. Let it flow. It will teach you." And slowly, his students learned to float in the currents of their lives, no longer fighting pain, no longer clinging to joy, but welcoming both as sacred guests in the house of the heart. Closing reflection. Letting the river carry you in your own life. You may feel at times like you're drowning in uncertainty, swept away by fear, or stuck in the muddy bends of sorrow. But the teaching of the river is this: you are never apart from the flow. The more you struggle, the more you sink. The more you surrender, the more you float. Let go, let it carry you, because the river is not your enemy, is your home. And every moment, like every drop of water, knows exactly where it needs to go. You do not have to control life to trust it. You only have to remember that, beneath the turbulence, there is always stillness. Blessing, may you float with grace. May your sorrows soften like stones. Beneath water, may your joy ripple outward, touching every shore. And when you are tired of clinging, may the river of life carry you gently into peace, because the peace that lives within you flows like the river that carries all things. Chapter 7. The peace that was always there, the final realization, is not something new, but something ancient remembered. In the gentle hush of dawn, the temple bell rang once low and deep, like the earth exhaling. The sound did not disturb the world, it reminded it of something long forgotten. A boy sweeping the stone path looked up not at the bell, but beyond it, to the mountains, and the stillness that rested upon them. In this final chapter, dear traveler of the inner world, we arrive not at a new destination, but back to the beginning, back to the place you have never truly left, back to the peace that was always there. The parable of the lost jewel there was once a man who wandered for decades in poverty. He begged in the streets, slept under bridges, and lived from moment to moment, never knowing where his next meal would come from. One day, he encountered an old friend, wealthy and radiant with joy. They embraced warmly. The friend listened to the man's tale of suffering and survival, and then, quietly, before they parted, the friend slipped something into his pocket. Without telling him, years passed, the man's life remained a struggle. Until one night, in a moment of despair, he reached into the lining of his old coat and discovered a hidden jewel, a priceless gem. He fell to the ground, laughing and weeping at once. It had been there all along. So too is peace. The teaching of non-Finnegan Zen, we are often warned, if you seek peace as something separate, you will create conflict. If you seek enlightenment as something distant, you will overlook the light. Already shining through your breath, you do not need to find peace. You need only to stop running from it. This is the gentle paradox of Buddhist teaching. The cessation of suffering is not an achievement, but a recognition. It is not won through effort, but revealed through stillness. Like a pond stirred by wind when it settles. The moon was always there. The story of the master and the empty. Teacup Pei, young seeker, once came to an old Zen master. I have studied all the scriptures, he said. I meditate for hours each day. I recite mantras. I purify my diet. But still, I do not feel peace. The master nodded and poured tea into the seeker's cup. He kept pouring. Tea spilled over the edges, dripped. Onto the floor, the student leaped up. Stop, it's full. The master looked up calmly. And so are you. Letting go of the search, you may have spent your life climbing mountains of achievement, building identities, perfecting roles, managing appearances. You may have worn masks for so long, you've forgotten the feel of your own skin. Chased peace in external circumstances when the bills are paid, when the body is perfect, when the love is secure, when the world stops trembling. But what if peace was not something you get but something you are? What if stillness is your true nature, not an exception? What if everything that blocks peace is not who you are, but who you learned to be? The wind in the bamboo there is a bamboo grove behind the ancient monastery of Mayun. When the wind comes, it does not fight the bamboo, it dances with it. The bamboo does not tense, it bends, it flows, it returns. It makes no demands on the wind. It yields and returns to stillness. Can you be like this? Can you stop resisting life's changes and trust that nothing can uproot what is truly rooted? When joy comes, let it move you. When sorrow comes, let it pass through you. When uncertainty arrives, welcome it as a traveler who brings questions rather than answers. This is not weakness. This is the grace of inner strength. The monk who laughed at the storm, it is said there was once a monk who lived alone on a cliffside. Night, a great storm came. Winds screamed. Rain battered the cliffs. Lightning split the sky. Villagers below feared for his life. But when they climbed the mountain the next day, they found him sitting cross-legged beneath a tree-soaked bush. Smiling, they asked, "Weren't you afraid?" The monk said, "I was afraid when I tried to fight the storm, but when I let it pass through me, there was only peace." Coming home to the body peace is not a thought. Peace is not a belief. Peace is not a future goal. Peace is a sensation, a presence, a return. It lives in the warm rise and fall of your belly, in the breath that moves in and out without permission, in the stillness behind your eyes when you stop grasping for the next moment. To know peace, come home to your body. Sit, breathe, feel the chair beneath you. Notice the spaces between your thoughts. Don't try to be peaceful. Just stop leaving yourself. The mirror that reflects nothing. The ancient masters say that the mind at rest is like a mirror. It reflects everything, but clings to nothing. Anger appears, then vanishes. Joy blossoms, then fades. Grief visits, then dissolves. The mirror does not hold the image. It remains untouched. This is your true nature. You are not the clouds of emotion. You are the sky they pass through. You are not the roles you play. You are the awareness that sees them. You are not the broken stories. You are the quiet that remains in the end. Only silence. When the Buddha approached death, his final words were not of grand revelation. He said, "All conditioned things are subject to decay. Strive on with diligence." And then, silence. But it was not the silence of absence. It was the silence of fullness. A silence that echoes in every sincere breath. A silence that says, "You were never separate. You were never lost. You have always been here." A final practice. The peace that needs nothing if you remember one thing from this journey, let it be this. Peace is not an escape. It is an embrace. Peace does not remove pain. It removes resistance to pain. Peace does not end the world's noise. It makes space within it. So sit, close your eyes, feel your body, feel the breath. Say silently, "I do not need to be more. I do not need to understand everything. I do not need to fix what is already flowing. I am here, and that is enough." Blessing for your journey. May you rediscover the jewel hidden in your coat. May you stop chasing and start returning. May your suffering soften into compassion. May your mind become a mirror and your heart a pond reflecting the moon. May your breath remind you of the miracle of now. May your presence be your offering, and may you know without question, without effort, that the peace you seek was always there. Chapter 1. The Search and the Renunciation. Long before the world came to know him as the Buddha, the Awakened One, he was known as Siddhartha, a prince of the Shakya clan, born to King Suddhodana and Queen Maya in the kingdom of Kapilavastu. His birth was accompanied by auspicious signs and celestial prophecies. Wise sages foretold that this child, radiant with spiritual potential, would either become a great emperor who would rule the world, or a spiritual sage who would liberate it. Desiring the former, King Suddhodana sought to shelter his son from the latter path. From his earliest days, Siddhartha was surrounded by luxury, beauty, and the illusion of permanence. His palace was a paradise crafted to prevent suffering from ever reaching his eyes. Servants danced to please him. Musicians played melodies to charm his ears. Gardens bloomed out of season to enchant his senses. And no one was allowed to grow old, fall ill, or die in his presence. But the truth of life cannot be locked away forever. One day, moved by a mysterious yearning, Siddhartha ventured beyond the palace gates in a chariot with his loyal charioteer, Shana. There, he encountered 4 sights that would change the trajectory of not only his life, but of human history itself. First, he saw an old man, hunched and frail, his body twisted by age. Then, a sick man groaning in pain, his skin pale and sweating. Next, a corpse being carried to the cremation ground. And finally, a wandering ascetic, serene and composed, who had renounced worldly pleasure in search of truth. These visions shattered the illusion that life in the palace had so carefully woven. Around him, Siddhartha returned to his chambers, disturbed. The question that had long been latent in his soul now burned like a fire. Is this all there is? Is suffering inevitable? Must all who live age, fall sick, and die? If so, what is the meaning of this fleeting existence? He looked around the palace and saw through its gold and glitter. The laughter of dancers now sounded hollow. The music of flutes faded into silence. The silk that touched his skin felt like chains. He could no longer enjoy what others called happiness, knowing that death would claim all things in time. And so the prince, who had everything the world could offer, felt a longing that the world could never satisfy. The renunciation was not a moment of impulse, but a decision born of clarity. In the deep hours of the night, Siddhartha silently stepped into the world beyond his palace, leaving behind his wife Yasodhara and his newborn son Rahula. He did not do this out of coldness or abandonment, but because the love he felt was too deep to let them live in ignorance. He left not for his own sake, but for the sake of all beings. He traded his princely robes for the humble garments of a wandering seeker. He cut his long hair with a sword. He walked barefoot into the unknown. This was the great renunciation, not of material things alone, but of identity, comfort, and certainty. Siddhartha's search began in earnest. He wandered from forest to forest, seeking out the most renowned spiritual masters of his time. He studied under Alara Kalama and Udaka Ramaputta, attaining the highest meditative absorptions they could teach. He mastered the arts of concentration and mental stillness, entering the formless realms of consciousness where the ego dissolved. But these exalted states, he saw, were temporary. When the meditation ended, the mind returned, and with it, the same old questions, still restless, Siddhartha turned to the path of asceticism, believing that extreme self-denial might purge the soul of all ignorance. For 6 years, he practiced severe austerities with 5 fellow seekers. He fasted until he was a shadow of flesh and bone. He held his breath until stars danced before his eyes. He sat motionless under the burning sun and freezing moon. His skin clung to his bones, his hair fell out, his heartbeat slowed, death hovered, and yet enlightenment did not come. One day, Siddhartha realized that his suffering had become another. Attachment to a subtler form of ego, clinging to the idea of spiritual superiority. In his quest to conquer desire, he had become desirous of conquering. The path of extreme self-denial was as imbalanced as the path of indulgence. He remembered a moment from childhood, when he had sat beneath a rose apple tree while his father plowed the field. In that quiet state, watching the stillness of life unfold, he had felt a peace that was effortless and true. It was not born of pleasure nor of pain, but of awareness. That memory returned to him like a whisper from his deeper self. And he knew then that the path to awakening was the middle, way not the extremes of indulgence or denial, but the path of balance, clarity, and deep inner seeing. Weak and trembling, he made his way to the nearby village, where a kind girl named Sujata offered him a bowl of rice milk. As the nourishing food passed his lips, strength returned to his body and insight to his mind. The 5 ascetics who had followed him, seeing him take food, abandoned him in disappointment, believing he had given up. But Siddhartha had found what they had not, the futility of extremes. That night, with renewed clarity, he walked to the bank of the Naranyara River. There he gathered grass for a cushion and sat beneath a great fig tree, later to be known as the Bodhi tree. He crossed his legs, straightened his spine, and with the earth as his witness, made a vow, though skin and sinew waste away, I will not rise from this seat until I have attained supreme enlightenment. And thus began the night that would transform him from the seeker into Gautama, the Buddha. The earth trembled as he entered deeper and deeper states of meditation. Mara, the lord of illusion, appeared with his army of fear, his daughters of temptation, and his weapons of doubt. But Siddhartha remained unmoved. He saw Mara not as an enemy, but as part of the ego's last defense. When Mara cried, "Who do you think you are to claim enlightenment?" Siddhartha touched the earth with his right hand, and the great earth goddess herself bore witness to his countless lifetimes of compassion, resolve, and wisdom. Mara vanished in the final watch of the night. Siddhartha's mind became like a vast, clear sky. He saw the interconnectedness of all life, the roots of suffering, the law of karma, and the cycle of birth and death. He saw the path that leads out of suffering, the path of mindfulness, morality, and wisdom. As the morning star rose, so too did a new being rise from the seat beneath the Bodhi tree. He was no longer Siddhartha, he was the Buddha, the awakened one. And so, the journey that began with a question led to the end of all questioning. The prince who left behind a palace had found a kingdom beyond death. The man who renounced the world had discovered the truth of all worlds. This was the search, and this was the renunciation that opened the door to liberation, not just for him, but for all beings who would walk the path after him. Chapter: The Vow and the Bodhi Tree in the Stillness of Dawn. When the world held its breath between night and morning, a solitary figure walked slowly along the edge of the Naranjana River. His body was thin like wind-carved stone. His eyes were deep pools reflecting the mystery of suffering and the longing to transcend it. This man, once known as Prince Siddhartha, now a seeker without possessions, had wandered through deserts of doubt and mountains of self-denial. For 6 long years he had walked away from every comfort, away from palaces and perfumed halls, toward a truth no one could hand to him. He had sat with sages. He had fasted until his bones echoed like hollow reeds. He had practiced disciplines so severe that even the trees seemed to lean away from him in grief. And yet, the ultimate truth, the truth that dissolves suffering and reveals peace, veiled like a distant light flickering beyond layers of fog. On this day, however, something had changed. Earlier, a village girl named Sujata had offered him a bowl of rice and milk. Her kindness was like the fragrance of a flower, blooming silently at dawn, unassuming yet powerful. As Siddhartha took that nourishment into his fragile body, he realized that extremes, whether indulgence or deprivation, were both chains. He saw clearly for the first time that the middle path, the way of balance, was the true foundation for liberation. And so, with quiet determination, he made his way to the shade of a great fig tree, its broad branches arched like the arms of the universe, reaching in every direction, offering shelter not just from sun and rain, but from illusion itself. This tree would later be known as the Bodhi tree, the tree of awakening. Siddhartha sat beneath it, crossing his legs in the immovable posture of meditation. He laid kusa grass beneath him, arranged his robes, and folded his hands in his lap. Then, in a voice not meant to be loud, but meant to echo through time, he made a vow not just for himself, but for all beings trapped in the endless wheel of suffering. Though my flesh may wither, though my bones turn to dust beneath me, I shall not rise from this seat until I have pierced through the veil of illusion and attained the wisdom that brings the end of all suffering. The birds fell silent. The wind seemed to bow. Even the stars far above paused in their courses. This was not the vow of a prince or a saint, but of a being standing at the edge of something timeless adore, between death and liberation, between fear and truth. The first watch, the river of lives as night fell, and the moon climbed its silver arc. Siddhartha's mind entered a stillness deeper than sleep. His breath slowed until it seemed the earth breathed for him. In this sacred silence, the first watch of the night began. He saw not one life, but countless lives. His own consciousness unraveled backwards across the tapestry of time. He saw himself, born as king and beggar, woman and warrior, merchant and monk, bird and beast. He remembered loves lost, wars fought, Tears shed, prayers whispered, and deaths met with trembling or grace, he realized all beings are caught in a endless wheel of birth, death, and rebirth, spinning not by fate, but by craving and ignorance. Karma, the law of cause and effect, governs this motion. As surely as gravity holds the stars, each action, each thought, each intention ripples outward across lifetimes, weaving the pattern of one's becoming. He saw the futility of blaming others, of resenting misfortune or clinging to identity. In that moment, compassion dawned in him not as a sentiment, but as a cosmic truth. Everyone was stumbling in the dark, reaching out blindly, yearning to end the suffering they did not yet understand. The thickened watch, the vision of all beings during the second watch of the night, his vision expanded like the ocean unfolding beneath the moon. He saw the death and rebirth of all beings across the universe, countless realms, vast and varied, each shaped by the karma of its inhabitants. He saw gods fading into animals, demons rising into humans, spirits becoming stars. Collapsing into Ashdod, he saw the faces of joy and despair, the causes of their birth and the seeds of their transformation. He saw how hatred chained the heart to suffering, and how love, when freed from attachment, became a path to awakening. Siddhartha no longer saw himself as separate. His heart opened like the petals of a lotus, touching every living being. He no longer sought enlightenment only for himself. He vowed, even more deeply than before, to awaken so that all beings might awaken. The third watch, the Four Noble Truths in, the third and final watch, just before dawn, like lightning cutting through darkness, the Four Noble Truths illuminated his mind. Dukkha, the nature of suffering life as it is ordinarily lived, is marked by dukkha satisfactoriness, suffering, anxiety, loss. Even joy carries the seed of sorrow, for all things are impermanent. Samudaya, the origin of suffering, the cause of suffering, is craving the thirst for pleasure, for permanence, for identity. We cling to things that change, and so we suffer. When they do, Nirvana, the cessation of suffering, suffering can end. When craving is let go, peace is revealed, not created, but uncovered, like the sun behind clouds. Magga, the path to the end of suffering there, is a path of discipline, understanding, and compassion. This is the Eightfold Path, which leads not just to liberation, but to the deep flourishing of the heart. The Great Awakening, as the first rays of dawn brushed the horizon. A great stillness fell over the earth. Birds began to sing again. The air shimmered with golden light and beneath the Bodhi tree. Siddhartha opened his eyes not as a man seeking, but as a Buddha, an awakened one. He had crossed the ocean of birth and death. The world still turned, but he no longer turned. With it, his mind was unshaken by gain or loss, by praise or blame, by pleasure or pain. He had touched the eternal silence beneath all sound. He had awakened not to a dream, but from one. The earth itself bore witness. Legend says that Mara the tempter had sent demons, daughters, storms, and doubts to sway him. But Siddhartha had sat unmoved at last, with no one else to call upon. He touched the earth with one hand and said, "Let the earth be my witness. I have found the path, I have seen the truth." And the earth, they say, trembled in acknowledgement. The afterglow of enlightenment, for 7 weeks, the Buddha remained. Near the Bodhi tree, not speaking, he gazed at the tree, walked under the stars, bathed in the river, and sat silently absorbed in the fullness of awakening. The gods themselves are said to have come to pay homage. He did not speak because truth, once seen, is beyond words. Yet he also knew that many were lost and a bridge was needed. So finally, he rose not as a teacher with answers, but as a guide to help others discover their own. The invitation of the Bodhi tree today, the Bodhi tree still stands its descendants, growing where the light of realization first bloomed. But the tree is not only in Bodh Gaya, it lives wherever someone sits quietly and turns within. It lives in your breath. It lives in your heart. When you sit still, when you stop grasping, when you vow to see clearly, no matter how long it takes you to sit beneath the Bodhi tree, you to make a vow, you too may awaken. Final words for the listener. Let this story remain not just as history, but as a mirror. Within you is the same capacity for awakening. You need not wander for 6 years or starve your body. The path is here. The stillness is within reach. The truth is already alive. In you, close your eyes, sit still, touch the earth, and vow to awaken, not only for your sake, but for the sake of all. The Four Noble Truths Unveiling the Heart of Awakening there is a story that begins not at the edge of discovery, but at the edge of honesty. A story that speaks not to what we wish life might be perfect, peaceful, painless, but to what life actually is. This is the story of the Four Noble Truths, the founding insights that emerged from the dawn of awakening beneath the Bodhi tree, and which continue to shine as the foundation of spiritual path. 1. Dukkha, the truth of suffering. Darkness before dawn. Siddhartha woke to the first truth. Life is marked by dukkha, not only gross suffering, but the subtle web of anxiety, disappointment, decay, and impermanence that underlies every moment of experience. Birth is dukkha. Aging is dukkha. Sickness, death, separation, striving, longing not found in every moment is the continuous undercurrent known as dukkha. Even pleasure contains the seed of pain, for all things change, fade, and slip away. This truth is not pessimism, it is realism. It speaks to the eternal tension between impermanence and attachment, between vibrant presence and inevitable loss, between the ever-fading moments and the grasping that refuses. Them too, samudaya, the origin of suffering, in that deep night. Siddhartha saw clearly, suffering does not arise from life itself, but from craving. Tanha, intense desire to hold on or push away. It is the taste for permanence in impermanent things, the hunger for control in a world that flows. It is craving for sensory pleasure, craving for becoming, craving for unbecoming, bound together in a web of attachment and ignorance. Craving is like lighting a fire. It demands fuel thoughts, fears, expectations, and when the fire burns, it blinds. It convinces you that peace lies in satisfying yourself, often at the cost of clarity, freedom, and compassion. 3. Nirodha, the cessation of suffering. Then, in the silent heart of the third watch before dawn, Siddhartha saw the possibility of peace not by suppressing life, but by letting go. In that clarity rose the third truth, Nirodha, the cessation of dukkha. When craving ceases, suffering ends not through annihilation, but through awakening. Peace is not somewhere out there. It is the unconditioned island that appears once craving is dropped. Nirodha is not an empty void. It is presence, luminous and clear, untouched by the storms of attachment. It is nirvana, the extinction of suffering, and the realization of freedom. 4. Magga, the path to the cessation of suffering. Finally dawn touched the sky, and Siddhartha realized he had not only seen suffering, its cause, and its possible end, but also the map out. This map is the noble eightfold path, a balanced way of living that cultivates wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. It is the bridge between insight and practice, the vessel that carries one from clinging into liberation. The Eightfold Path includes right understanding and right intention, wisdom, right speech, right action, right livelihood, ethical conduct, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, mental discipline. These are not doctrines to memorize, but qualities to embody. They source from compassion, not morality, enforced from clarity, not guilt, demanded. Zooming in personal reflections and parables facing suffering in daily life, consider your heart, dear listener. There are times of blunt pain, missed, doors unloved, losses that echo long after griefs fade. Yet, even in ordinary moments, the restlessness before sleep, the ache of not enough, the dissatisfaction unquenched by what is gained, that too is dukkha. The roots of craving what are the stories you repeat. I don't feel enough, unless, or if only, that didn't happen. These thoughts fuel craving. They feed the illusion that life must conform to our will instead, of unfolding as it does, cessation as invitation. Not rejection. Stop for a moment. Breathe. Feel the space behind sensations and thoughts. In that space is nirvana. It is not rejection of life, but a return to what is always present beneath the turmoil. Walking the path. Begin with right speech, kind, necessary, honest. Notice how your heart softens. Practice right actions, acts of integrity. Feel the shift in your posture. Cultivate mindfulness. Pause between stimulus and response. Watch how suffering loosens. Why these truths matter: they uproot ignorance, making liberation possible. They dissolve blame and guilt, revealing that suffering is not sin, but disconnection. They honor the fragility of life-aging sickness, death without fear. They show how to awaken in the midst of impermanence. They call you to act not by force, but by intention. Not by perfection, but by presence. Integrating the truths, a guided reflection. Let's sit together. Close your eyes, feel your breath. Notice your thoughts. No judgment, no grasping. Now, internally speak. I recognize dukkha in my life. Something is not okay. I trace its origin. I see where craving and clinging arise. I open to the possibility of cessation. I do not need to follow this hunger any further. And I step into the path. Right action, right mindfulness, right understanding. Steadily, moment by moment. Pause a while. Notice what shifts. Even the smallest softening of tension is the path beginning to open. Closing blessing. The four noble truths are not a set of beliefs. They are living mirrors, reflecting what is real, what traps us, and what frees us. They were not delivered on a mountaintop for elites, but shared by a man who, beneath a tree, remembered what we all have forgotten: that peace is possible, and freedom is not distant, but here now. Beneath your breath, may you see suffering. Clearly not to be consumed by it, but to understand it. May you trace your fears, not to blame yourself, but to release them. May you awaken not to become something else, but to discover who you've always been, and may you journey with compassion, wisdom, and steady courage along the path that leads home. In the silence between night and dawn, a subtle shift occurs, not with dramatic thunderclaps, but with the quiet certainty of light-piercing darkness. This chapter is the story of that light, the moment when a mind grown weary of seeking simply sees it as the unveiling of wisdom, the experience of awakening. Let's return once more to the scene beneath the Bodhi tree, where Siddhartha sat with unwavering determination, each breath a bell, each thought a wave, gradually settling. And when the first light of dawn brushed his vision, a transformation occurred that would echo through countless lifetimes. This is the light of awakening. A stillness pregnant with reverence. Night had surrendered to morning. Stars faded. The coolness of darkness receded. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves-rich exhale of nature, honoring something more than time had passed. Siddhartha's vigil was nearing its culmination. His vow remained: he would not rise until the illusion shattered. In that stillness, Siddhartha's consciousness expanded. He became not just a witness, but the silent ground in which all phenomena appeared. The final nest of doubt unraveled, a great light knot shining from outside. But arising from the depth of his own being flooded his awareness. With it came clarity. With it came compassion. With it came the recognition that all beings share this light, even when they cannot see it. Mara's last stand. The Temptations of Illusion legend tells that Mara, the personification of fear, desire, and ego, rose one last time. He brought forms both terrifying and seductive, armies to frighten, daughters to lure, illusions of power to deceive. But Siddhartha, as the earth beneath him, refused to move. He recognized Mara not as a literal adversary, but as the last barrier, the final clutch of pride and resistance inside his own mind. With one hand extended to the earth, he called on her as witness. Earth, I claim my right by all that I have, cultivated through lifetimes of compassion and discipline. And the earth trembled, an ancient acknowledgement that the awakening had arrived. Mara vanished not with rage, but dissolving like mist before dawn. Dawn breaks, the Four Noble Truths become gold as dawn, unfurled its golden banner. Each of the Four Noble Truths gleamed freshly revealed. Dukkha, the prevalence of suffering. Samudaya, craving's grip. Nirodha, the possibility of cessation. Magga, the luminous path toward liberation. But now they were not philosophical statements. They were lived realities. The darkness of ignorance had lifted, and the structure of awakening shone from within. Siddhartha no longer saw division. He saw the unity of universe and self. He saw compassion as cosmic, not sentimental. He felt his love not toward beings, but as beings ingraspable, luminous, infinite. The inner vision, seeing all through the eye of Widsoman, that light Siddhartha saw deeply. He perceived all beings, not as separate individuals, but as streams of consciousness playing different forms. He saw existence, not as reality, but as a tapestry of causes and conditions, fluid and fragile. He saw the mind, not as a container, but as the mirror in which all phenomena arise and dissolve. He no longer needed to conquer suffering. He simply stood beyond it free, the echo of silence, awakening beyond words. Words came and could not contain the experience, yet silence alone would be incomplete for the many still trapped in delusion. So Siddhartha rose. He walked with poised gentleness. He touched the earth beneath his feet for 7 weeks. He remained there, sometimes walking, sometimes silent, sometimes barely breathing. During that time, the divine energy of awakening rippled outward, but through him quietly, many approached, but found no teacher, only stillness. The light shared, setting the wheel in motion. When it was time, he offered the first teaching not as doctrine, but as path. The eye of the awakened sees, but sees without grasping. The heart acts, but without imposing. The mind knows but does not cling. He invited others not to worship him, but to awaken themselves, and his first disciples, those who had waited beneath the same fig tree, recognized something in him that shone not in the world, but in all they had forgotten that they too contained birthless light. Invitations for your own awakening, dear listener. The light that dawned beneath that tree remains, since it does not depend on temple stones, lineage, or ceremony it blooms. When you sit still and open your heart, where can you find it inside? In the pause between breath and thought, in the witness beyond reaction, in the acceptance dissolving. Fear and compassion meeting suffering. Let us pause together now. Breathe deeply. Recognize the light inevitable in your presence. It is quiet, it is subtle, it is unconditional. Meditative exploration. Meeting the light within, close your eyes. Inhale softly, exhale completely. Feel your heartbeat steady. Alive. Rest your awareness at the third eye point. No effort, no striving. Just allow a sense of spaciousness to arise. In that space, light becomes your nature again. Stories of shared awakening. A monk once climbed a mountain seeking a master. He found only a rock. Standing before it, he felt recognition. The rock did not judge. The rock did not speak. The rock simply was, and the monk bowed on in that moment. Saw the stagnant mind fall away. Another story. A traveler came to a desert wanderer and asked, "Where is truth?" The wanderer touched the saddlebags and said, "It cannot be carried." He uncovered an empty canvas. "Look," he said, "it is clear because nothing blocks it." These signs point to the light within, but they cannot show it. Only direct realization can. What awakening changes and what it doesn't, it does not remove emotions, grief, joy, fear, but it softens their grip. It does not remove suffering, it transforms how you relate to it. It does not remove life's challenges, it allows you to meet them with presence rather than reactivity. The light does not overthrow life, it illuminates life, a blessing for the pathholder. May you meet the stillness beneath the storms. May you know the light that never dims. May your eyes pierce illusion not to destroy, but to awaken. May your heart hold suffering not to fix, but to transform. And may you remember when darkness seems endless that the dawn is always nearer than you think. You are the light that lets the world show itself. Awaken now and see. The moon has set, dawn is stirring. But in the hush still left behind, there exists a moment of clarity, unshakable knowing that something true has begun. This chapter is about that unfolding, how the silence beneath the Bodhi tree transformed into a living tradition, a river of wisdom flowing through time. This is the transmission, how awakening moves from one heart to another. After the awakening, silence that speaks 7 weeks passed after the Buddha awakened. The air around him held a sacred charge, clear, still, unforced. Yet he said nothing. Words, he realized, can cage insight. Truth is alive in silence, but silence is not enough alone. If no one hears, the light dims. The gods themselves are said to have visited himboing at the base of the tree, but even divine homage could not awaken humanity. So on the 7th week, he rose from below the Bodhi tree, not because he gained power, but because he carried a gift, not knowledge to give, but presence to invite others into. The first steps, from silence to speech, he walked alone, barefoot, under ancient forest canopies, light as wind. His mind uncluttered, open as a lake beneath the sky. He journeyed toward Deer Park at Isaputana, the place of his first teaching. Curious wanderers followed him, not seeking miracles, but something deeper. A young seeker named Kandina was among them. Kandina had thirsted for meaning. He bowed, waiting. Standing beneath a grove, the Buddha spoke for the first time. There is suffering. There is a cause. There is an end. There is a way. With these words, the Four Noble Truths became living, not abstract, but immediate, not distant, but near, as close as breath. The first disciples, awakening together, Kandana understood, not conceptually, but experientially. The teaching touched the end of craving and the possibility of peace. He became the first awakened disciple. Came others, Yasodhara, his own former wife, Mara's daughters, Sariputta and Moggallana, Ananda, and many more. Each encountered that same clarity, not because the Buddha taught lessons, but because he embodied them. Awakening was not conveyed, it was invited. They formed the first Sangha community of seekers living together, supporting each other in practice. The Buddha remained teacher, but also mirror and companion. He did not demand blind faith, but encouraged questioning. His words were tools, not idols. Teaching in soft simplicity, the Buddha taught in villages and forests. He walked the dusty roads, entered homes, and sat beneath trees with all who would listen. He adapted teachings to each person's readiness, sometimes using parables, sometimes pointing directly to suffering, sometimes offering silence. He spoke not as a philosopher, but as someone who had met the end of suffering in his own being. Whether discussing generosity, ethics, or meditation, every lesson was rooted in embodiment. His life became living dharma, passing the torch, empowering the disciples, but he did not cling to his position. He empowered his disciples. When asked, he would say, "You too can become a Buddha, a fully awakened one. I only show the way." At Visoli, after the passing of venerable monks, he convened the first council, not to enshrine dogma, but to safeguard the purity of the teaching. He entrusted the Sangha with the path. He stepped back not in avoidance, but in confidence. The infinite eco-centuries later, The transmission continues not as a fossil, but as living light. Teachings cross oceans, languages, cultures. Retreats are held in modern cities. Meditation centers whisper ancient truths in bustling streets. Digital platforms carry the Dharma further than the Buddha's feet ever walked. Still, the essential invitation remains unchanged. See suffering clearly. Understand its cause. Discover its end. Walk the path with integrity, compassion, and mindfulness. Parable, the lamp in the cave. Imagine standing in a cave, dark inside. A single lamp is lit. Its flame moves, swings, casts dancing shadows. You feel fear, not seeing beyond your hands. Another person, unseen, lights a small match. At the mouth of the cave, suddenly the lamp is vibrant. The walls glow. You see the path out. The second person doesn't carry you. They simply illuminated the way for themselves. Then the cave was lit for both. This is transmission, not pushing, not pulling, but illuminating. Reflection. Transmission in your own life. Have you ever experienced transformation after meeting someone else's presence? A teacher's calm changed your restlessness. A friend's compassion transformed your shame. A stranger's kindness healed your loneliness. This too is the Dharma. The quality of awakened mind can live without robes or temples. It lives in clarity, kindness, and humble letting go. Guided reflection, opening to the light beyond words. Pause for a moment. Sit quietly. Breathe in, out. Imagine a silent lamp. Within you, your own potential for insight and awakening that has been lit since birth. Now imagine that someone sits with you in silence, not speaking, only present. In that presence, the candle in your heart brightens. You feel steadier, softer, awake. Transmission is not about taking on new teachings. It is rediscovering what has always been. You don't leave your life behind. You simply begin to inhabit it more fully. Transmission through embodiment. To transmit awakening is to live it. Speak with kindness without forcing. Act with integrity. When no one watches, listen with openness without trying to fix. Breathe with depth, remembering the silence that precedes sound. When you do these things, you become the light spinner, not the flame, but the clear space in which it shines. May the light that dawned beneath the Bodhi tree rise in your life, not as external belief, but as inner clarity. May your speech heal, your presence comfort, your actions awaken. May your heart carry the path gently, faithfully, not as legacy, but as living possibility. And may you know this deeply. The awakening was never only the Buddha's. It is yours, always was, always is, always will be. Chapter: The peace that lives within you in the quiet folds of a sun-warmed forest. Beneath the canopy of Bodhi trees, a monk named Ananda sat cross-legged beside a gentle stream. The leaves above rustled like whispers from ancient teachers, and the water below carried the stories of the mountains to the valleys in eternal surrender. The world was hushed, as if nature itself bowed in silence to listen. Ananda's robes were simple, his eyes clear, but his heart carried 1,000 unanswered questions. Though he had followed the Buddha for many years, served him faithfully, and learned countless teachings, there remained a restlessness within him, subtle agitation, like a trembling leaf resisting the breeze. One morning, as dew still clung to the petals of wild jasmine, the Buddha approached Ananda. His walk was so silent that even the birds did not flee. He smiled, knelt beside Ananda, and held out an empty clay bowl. "Ananda," the Buddha said, "what is the sound of this bowl?" Ananda looked at it with confusion. "There is no sound, Blessed One. The bowl is empty. The Buddha nodded. Just so. Is your heart ready to receive peace? Ananda did not speak. He bowed his head and felt a gentle weight lift from his chest. In that moment, he understood. Peace is not something to be gained or constructed. Peace is what remains when all else has settled. The bowl of silence in the days that followed, the Buddha told his disciples a story. There was once a farmer who owned a noisy field. He began, "The birds cawed, the oxen groaned, the wind howled through the reeds." The farmer sought silence, so he chased away the birds, muzzled the oxen, and cut down the reeds. Still, his field was not silent, so he covered his ears with cloth. But even then, he could hear the pounding of his own heart. Finally, he sat down in the middle of the field and stopped trying to control the sound. As he breathed, the sounds blended into one harmonious rhythm. In his surrender, he found silence, not the absence of noise, but the presence of stillness. The disciples nodded, but Ananda wept quietly. He recognized that his own striving had been like the farmer's chasing. Each grasp for control had kept him further from the peace he sought. The river within later that evening, Ananda sat by the river, watching its glassy current flow over stones. The water did not resist the rocks. It embraced them, flowing around their presence, transforming obstruction into music. A young novice named Rahula approached and asked, "Venerable Ananda, how can I find peace when my mind is so noisy?" Ananda did not answer immediately. He cupped his hand into the stream, lifted water to his lips, and drank. Then he said, "The mind is like this river. If you try to still it by force, it will rebel. But if you observe its current without clinging or pushing, it begins to slow. On its own, watch your thoughts as clouds pass through the sky, not as enemies to fight." Rahula bowed and sat beside him. Together they watched the moon rise over the water, its reflection perfect even amidst the ripples. A man named Kassapa, once a fearsome bandit and now a wandering seeker, came to the Sangha. His past had been paved with pain-greed, violence, and loss. He approached the Buddha with trembling hands. "Many lives with my desire. Is there peace even for someone like me?" The Buddha looked into his eyes and replied, "Kassapa, even a fire that has raged for 100 years will extinguish if you no longer feed it." "But how do I stop feeding it?" Kassapa asked. "Begin," the Buddha said, "by watching the hunger without giving it food. When desire arises, name it. This is longing. When anger flares, name it. This is heat. Do not become these states. Greet them as visitors, but offer them no shelter." Kassapa wept openly. He fell at the Buddha's feet, not in shame, but in relief. He finally understood he did not need to punish himself to be free. He needed to stop believing that he was the fire, the loyal horse among the Sangha. There was once a horse named Kanthaka who had carried Siddhartha out of the palace. On the night of the Great Renunciation, years later, aged and calm, the horse rested under a Bodhi tree as disciples gathered around Kanthaka. Though silent in voice, was revered as a symbol of loyalty and stillness. The Buddha once said, "Kanthaka taught me the meaning of letting go. He did not resist when I led him away from royalty to renunciation. He walked with me not for comfort, but for truth." Like Kanthaka, the Buddha continued, "You must learn to carry your burden with dignity, and to release it when the time comes. The path of peace is not comfort, but clarity. And clarity arises not in resistance, but in surrender." The story begins in the ancient kingdom of Kapilavastu, cradled by verdant hills and bathed in golden sunlight. It was here, within the walls of a palace built of white stone and ivory, that a child named Siddhartha was born. His arrival was heralded not by celebration alone, but by portents. Divine beings praised the boy in visions. Sages declared that he would become either a world-conquering king or a transcendent teacher known across millennia. From his first breath, Siddhartha was cocooned in luxury. King Suddhodana, his father, determined that no shadow of suffering would ever darken his son's life. Age, illness, conflict, and death were kept hidden behind high walls. His mother's attendants prevented sickness. Surgeons disguised signs of aging on visiting elders. The palace never spoke of death. Everything shimmered with beauty. The seasons were orchestrated to remain warm and pleasant within this enchanted world. Siddhartha grew radiant, curious, loved. The palace felt endless. Crystal-clear pools reflected jasmine-scented terraces. Servants sang soft melodies at sunrise. The prince, played by lotus ponds, learned with the kingdom's best tutors and laughed with ease in halls lined with silk. People said he was destined for greatness, a king, they believed, who would rule with wisdom and peace. But beneath the surface, something deeper stirred. Even as a boy, Siddhartha sometimes paused in the midst of his pleasure, gazing beyond the palace gates. The laughter of courtiers felt hollow when compared to some silent ache inside him. He would hear the wind rustling through the olive trees outside, feel the pulse of life beyond the walls, and something within him said, "This is not enough." He sensed an unnameable longing, like a bird in a gilded cage opening its song to the open sky at dusk, even as golden dishes were laid before it. It was as though his heart carried a question so ancient that no words could touch it, and no comfort could soothe it. At night, he would lie awake in his chambers. Servants coaxed him to sleep with lullabies, but his mind drifted to distant things: a dying leaf, the sound of a traveler's footstep outside the gates, the echo of a sorrow he could not yet understand. A deep restlessness pulled at him, not anger, not guilt, but a gentle ache, a yearning. Is this all life offers? Yet Siddhartha never spoke of this longing. Not yet. The palace taught him to find contentment in beauty. He studied scriptures and philosophy, learned to memorize teachings, to debate ideas. He was praised for his intelligence, his graciousness, his equanimity. And in every hall, people saw in him the promise of a future leader, a thinker unmatched in insight. But the longing remained, and in the breath between dreams and wakefulness, he began to feel that something essential lay beyond palaces, beyond knowledge, beyond praise. One evening, at the age of 29, Siddhartha climbed a mild hill with his charioteer, Channa, beyond the outer gardens. The slope ended at a breach in the palace walls, where he glimpsed the world he had never seen. A forest, shimmering in twilight, ancient and vast, a bird's distant call, the scent of untamed earth in that breath, the boundaries cracked. His heart recognized in that open air something he had forgotten. The thousand comforts of the palace suddenly felt fragile in comparison to the mysterious promise of that dim wood. The breeze that stirred his hair seemed to carry a truth far older than kingdoms. That night, he lay alone, reviewing his life. The jewels, the dances, the fine garments, all seemed to lose solidity. He saw them as illusions of comfort, masks that hid deeper truths. A question filled him that had no name. Who am I? And beneath that, why do beings suffer? In the quiet hours, as moonlight sifted through jasmine petals, Siddhartha knew he could no longer abide within the palace illusions. Not because he despised life, but because his love for truth was greater than his love for ignorance. He felt an inner call so clear that it sounded like silence whispering, "There is more. Find it." The longing had no shape, no expectation. It was peace recognizing itself beneath the noise of pleasure. It was yearning for love that is not bound. Two forms. It was the first step in the path to awakening. Inner reflection, the gentle beginning within you. Pause now, dear listener. Settle into your breath. Feel the air entering and exiting like the hush between heartbeats. Consider this longing within. Siddhartha, longing that was neither painful nor urgent, but sweet, persistent, patient. It was the first whisper of awakening. Do you sense something like that inside you? Maybe it appears when the day feels too loud, too busy. Maybe it stirs when comfort loses meaning, or words feel hollow. It may be subtle, like a distant star. In twilight, shining without needing audience, that longing is your compass. It is not cruelty toward life, it is care for life itself. When satisfaction feels fleeting and peace felt out of reach, that ache is not despair. It is not failure, it is your heart waking up. Allow your breath to rest. Let thoughts soften. And like Siddhartha gazing beyond the palace walls, let your heart gaze inward, without striving, without resistance. This longing is not something to fix, it is something to follow. Guided pause and gentle practice, close your eyes gently. Take a long, slow breath in for the count of 4. Hold softly for the count of 2. Exhale fully for the count of 6. Notice the silence in the pause as you rest here. Imagine a young heart under a moonlit sky, free from expectation, free from force-only longing. Imagine that heart breathing softly, naturally. Let the longing be your companion. No judgment, no hurry. Closing whisper of peace. The palace remains behind us now. The ancient longing unfolds, and within you timeless steady is the first stir of awakening. Your peace is not out there. It lives here, in the still space between breaths. In the soft question hovering beyond words, may this gentle beginning guide you. May you walk the path, not by leaving life, but by fully entering it. The path begins, not with the four encounters, but with attention. Cracks in the illusion of intimacy, the walls of comfort already here, and the soul begins to see. Rest now. Opening invitation, breathe. Enter with me. Let the longing deep beyond as pain to the ancient streets beyond the palace gates. To the peace already within, young princes, you are home. Heart first cracked open. There, amid dusty lanes and whispered truths, he encountered realities that no luxury could veil in. Began the path that changed not only his life, but the course of all beings. 1. The first sight, old AJS, a young man of 29, Prince Siddhartha persuaded his charioteer, Channa to guide him beyond the palace's manicured gardens. Though their journey was brief, it led them past the highest walls into the outskirts of the city. There they came upon a frail old man, bent and trembling, his back curved by the weight of years. The prince's heart tightened. He had never seen such a body. He saw wrinkles deep as ravines, joints that groaned with each movement, skin stretched thin over bones, and slow, uncertain steps. In that moment, he understood that life itself carried decay, and that even a body once strong must yield to time. He looked at Channa and said quietly, "Channa, this was not part of the palace stories." Channa replied softly, "Lord, yet all who live are touched by old age." Something in Siddhartha snapped. He felt as though a color had been stripped from life's palette, and the pleasant world he knew now seemed ephemeral, transient, unsustainable. 2. The second sight, sickness. They continued, guided by sunset shadows, until they came upon a man writhing in fever, his body ravaged by sickness. His lips were parched, his eyes vacant. His groans cut through the still air like lamenting winds. Siddhartha's heart felt heavy. He remembered his mother, asleep peacefully in her bed at the palace, protected from disease. He had never considered that such suffering could be common, or that his own body might one day betray him. In that instant, he realized that vitality could slip away, that illness could invade even the strongest frames. The comfortable life he had known felt illusionary. The palace gardens could not shield a heart or a body from sickness. 3. The third sight, death. The journey led them to a funeral procession, mourners weeping softly as they carried a body shrouded in cloth, steps slow and funerary chants trailing. In the wind, Siddhartha saw the pale corpse, the stillness of hands, the emptiness in observed faces. He understood for the first time that life always ends, that death comes to all regardless of rank, virtue, wisdom, or youth. And in that recognition, the prince felt grief, not just for the body that lay before him, but for his own life, fragile, fleeting, unmoored. He whispered to Chuna, "Tell me, is this also part of life?" Chuna nodded, "Yes, my lord. Even kings and beggars meet this fate." The finality of death struck the heart like a bell in the dark. It echoed through the corridors of his mind. In that echo, Siddhartha felt a stirring, a call not toward despair, but toward seeking understanding. 4. The fourth sight, the seeker as twilight, deepened. The chariot paused. Before them stood a Munkor, mendicant clothed in rags, serene, radiant in presence, his countenance calm, unfazed by passing life. He sat cross-legged under a tree, meditation woven into his being. The prince asked, "Who is this man?" Chuna explained, "He is one who renounced the world to seek peace beyond comfort. He follows a path unknown to most." In that moment, Siddhartha saw not just a man, but a possibility, a way to face suffering, aging, illness, death not by denial, but by embracing truth, a way to find peace by stepping beyond illusion. The cracks in the palace illusions had formed. A vast question opened in his heart. What is the path that goes beyond suffering? Inner reflection. Close your eyes. Breathe gently. Feel the solidity beneath you and the trembling inside. Imagine Siddhartha's gaze, first startled at old age, then pained by sickness, then silent before death, then drawn to the serenity of one who had renounced all. Notice that these realities, aging, illness, death, touch everyone. They are the great equalizers. Yet forgiveness waits in the wisdom response to them. Allow yourself to feel the weight, not with fear, but with awe at the simple truth. Life is fragile, and the world asks questions beyond stories. 5. Reflections. Under the Bodhi tree, echo of encounters later, beneath the Bodhi tree, Siddhartha recalled these 4 sights. Each image burned with meaning. The frail old man, even beauty fades. The sick man, even strength falls. The corpse, even life ends. The serene seeker, there is another way. He understood that life is impermanent, not to frighten him, but to invite him to awaken. That suffering is not punishment, but signal. Look deeper. He saw clearly that no palace, no pleasure, no denial could hold what is real. The only refuge remained within a stillness, untouched by change. 6. The cracks become a door over the next nights. Siddhartha could not sleep. The palace gardens now felt like illusions of comfort, distant and hollow. He longed for truth. He knew the palace could no longer support such longing. His old doubts, his new insights, and the presence of suffering began to converge. Toward a turning point, the palace walls did not collapse, they dissolved slowly, imperceptibly, until only one thing remained, his heart calling out for true peace. 7. Gentle. Prompt. For listeners, in the space of these encounters lies your own awakening. Pause now. Reflect. On your own, for encounters, moments when illusion cracked. Perhaps it was grief, loss, betrayal, illness, or seeing another's pain. These cracks are not wounds, they are doorways, and in them lies an invitation to meet life with clarity, to let admiration for illusion melt into insight, to surrender comfort when it hides inquiry. Remember, Siddhartha did not leave the palace in anger. He left in love for all beings, seeking peace beyond turmoil. 8. Guided mindfulness. Pause it with your breath. Inhale, feel space grow. Exhale, let grasping soften. Repeat with all 4 encounters as silent reflections. Aging, illness, death, the determined seeker let each breath dissolve boundaries between illusion and seeing. Witness yourself awakening, just like Siddhartha. In the quiet unfolding of presence. Closing quiet whisper, these 4 encounters were not merely sights, they were revelations. Long ago, beneath palace walls, a young man named Siddhartha faced the inevitable. And rather than retreat, he stepped forward, awakening. Let your own cracks carry light. Let your own longing, your own meetings with reality guide you home. For the path to awakening begins, not in understanding, but in seeing. Rest now, dear one. Let the echoes settle. And know, beneath all forms, your heart is already pure, waiting to be recognized. The great renunciation, leaving the palace when love becomes limitless and the heart seeks truth beyond comfort. In the silent hours before dawn, life moves at its subtlest tempo. Each breath soft, each thought almost still. In those spaces, a courageous turning can occur. A turning not born of fear, but of love so deep it crosses boundaries and speaks of freedom. This is the time when Prince Siddhartha stood at a threshold between all he knew and the path he was destined to walk. He did not walk away simply from a palace. He walked toward a possibility held within every being, awakening a night of farewell that evening. Beneath the glow of a waning moon, Siddhartha paced gently in the courtyard of his chamber. Courtiers sang lullabies. Servants sprinkled jasmine. Petals on courtiers' sleeping rugs, torches flickered by the polished marble walls. His wife Yasodhara slept peacefully. His son Rahula rested beside her. The world expected him to rest. The world expected continuation, and yet something inside him had shifted. He sat quietly, gazing at the sleeping pair. He felt love, not sorrow. He felt devotion, not obligation. And through that love, a deeper truth whispered, you can't take them into suffering. You must first find what lies beyond it. He rose, donned humble cloth that would not identify him as prince, and rang a small bell to awaken his charioteer, Channa. The night air was cool, fragrant with night-blooming flowers. In that delicate quiet, he spoke. Channa, I have traveled across lifetimes. I have followed teachers, practiced austerities, known luxury and deprivation. Yet there is one path I have not walked, the path beyond all clinging. Walk with me now, only until I have found what no palace can provide. At his side, Channa bowed deeply. Fear and loyalty mingled in his gaze, but he knew the truth had come for his master. He would follow him into the dark forest if need be. Stepping beyond illusions, they passed through gates that once felt protective, now felt fragile. Each step echoed on the cold stones. Pomegranate and jasmine scents trailed behind him, symbolic of both sweetness and mortality. The guards, half asleep, perceived nothing. The palace cradled his absence in silence, unaware he had left, not out of rebellion, but revelation. In that moment, Siddhartha's first renunciation was complete, not the leaving of luxury, but the surrender of identity. He no longer carried the name of prince. He carried only his heart and a vow. I will not rest until suffering is undone. A life unfolding in naked truths, the forest welcomed him without ceremony. Shadows stretched as they entered tangles of tall grasses. The breeze whispered through leaves like an ancient chant. Dew gathered on the tips of Bladesteiny lamps of life, illuminating a world free from artifice. In the forest, he slept on earth. He ate simple food offered by villagers and wandering mendicants. He bathed in the river's flowing water. He felt the sun's rays without tapestry. He heard the wind in his hair without pillows or protection. He felt emergence, not deprivation. He felt expansion, not erasure. Each moment awakened him anew. Love that knows no limits as he walked beneath the broad canopy of trees. He thought of Yasodhara and Rahula. He did not leave out of disdain, but out of devotion. He offered not neglect, but sacrifice. Love without limits does not clutch, it sets free. He left behind the roles husband and father, to fully understand the turmoil he carried within. Only by understanding suffering could he bring genuine liberation, not just to himself, but to all beings. That love now whispered within his heart, clear and unwavering, even if only one being is saved. The path has worth the weight of transformation. Carried no wealth, no titles, and no illusions. In his begging bowl, he collected offerings of rice pudding or fruit. Though each morsel was rich with meaning, in his mind he carried the image of the suffering world and the vow to awaken within it, not apart from it. Some nights he felt the cold sear through his bones. Hunger hollowed his belly. Doubt shadowed his mind. But each time he remembered the ache is not suffering. The holding onto the ache is. So he held space for his own fear. In that space, butterflies hovered near his heart, delicate, breathtaking. And he felt wonder that life could become sacred in its simplest offerings. Wonder that renunciation was not giving up life, but rediscovering it. A tale of two horses legend speaks of two horses that carried Siddhartha out of the palace. One stayed behind, the other followed him, silent and loyal. That horse, named Kanthaka, walked with Siddhartha until his strength could carry his master no longer. When Kanthaka collapsed, the Buddha later said, in his loyalty, "He taught me the meaning of true letting go." He served without attachment. He walked with me until his heart could walk no more. That is love's final form, the willingness to release. Even animals, unknowingly, can mirror the quality of awakening. Kanthaka's death carried no grief. His loyalty reached its completion. In his silence, he became wisdom itself. In a reflection, your own. Renunciation, take a breath, pause, feel within. What are you holding on to that no longer serves you? A story? A habit? A fear? Imagine releasing it like Siddhartha released silk and jewels, not because they were wrong, but because they were limited. Let them go not with fear, but with reverence. Pause again. Let your thought rest. Allow the surrendered truths to reveal something greater beneath. Your unconditioned heart, guided breathing. Practice inhale deeply for counts. Feel possibility. Exhale slowly, 6 counts. Release limitation. Repeat, grounding into the moment. Visualize stepping away from palace walls, walking toward clarity, toward peace. Closing whisper of stillness. The great renunciation is not renouncing life. It is embracing what is essential. It is not abandonment, but alignment. When Siddhartha left the palace, he did not retreat. He advanced into truth, into awakening, into the wave of compassion that would pour through his life. The path continues to call. Each time you let go of illusions, you take another step into freedom. Rest now. Breathe. The night sky above the forest. Vast, timeless. The soil beneath your body, steady, alive. In between lies the heart of your being, unbroken, luminous, free. This is the beginning of awakening, not in violence, but in love that knows no limits. Part 4. The Middle Way. Learning from extremes. When wisdom emerges not through extremes, but through balance. Opening stillness. Take a deep breath. Rest your awareness in the gentle balance between inhalation and exhalation. You are already poised, in the middle between thoughts, between worlds. This is where the middle way begins. The two extremes, luxuries and denial. After the great renunciation, Siddhartha wandered. He sought teachers, wandered into forests, fasted until his body felt translucent. His mind remained alert, but his flesh weakened. He wore robes from cemeteries, subsisted on a single grain of rice, held his breath until pain lodged in his ears. His ribs protruded, his eyes sunken. He looked like a living skeleton. But clarity did not come. Instead, his practice was rooted in an attachment to suffering, the belief that pain itself could purify. This was the second major illusion. The first had been the palace, indulgence in pleasures. The second, punishment of the flesh. Both were traps. A turning point beneath the rose apple tree. One day, near a forest stream, Siddhartha sat heavy with exhaustion. Then a childhood memory stirred. A moment beneath a rosapole tree when he sat as a young boy, watching the breeze move through petals, empty but attentive. There was no craving, no force, only peaceful clarity. In that instant, the tight grip loosened. He realized awakening is not forged through force. It doesn't arise from extremes, neither opulence nor asceticism. It emerges from balance, from receptivity, from love that does not need to prove itself through deprivation or indulgence. Sujtat's gift, nourishment beyond extremes. Soon afterward, a village girl named Sujtat approached Siddhartha. She offered a bowl of milk rice, the simplest meal, rich with compassion. At first, he hesitated. Would nourishment mean abandoning his search? But then he saw the truth. Rejecting life is not awakening. Honoring it is he accepted. His strength returned, his mind steadied, his heart softened. The 5 ascetics who had supported him left in disappointment. They saw his act as betrayal. But Siddhartha had not abandoned the path. He found it the awakening seed, planted with renewed clarity. He sat beneath the Bodhi tree, vowing, though my flesh and nerves and bones may waste away, I will not rise until awakening is won. This was no return to extremes, it was informed resolve. His vow was still, balanced, unwavering. He now embraced a life neither soft nor punishing, but wise. When Mara tempted him with visions of pleasure and fear, Siddhartha held fast, the earth, calling it as witness to his inner journey. Mara fled, the dawn broke. Siddhartha rose not as prince, not as self-punisher, but as the awakened one. The 2 extremes rejected in his first teaching. The Buddha named the 2 extremes. Indulgence in sensual pleasure, the low path of unawakened people. Self-mortification, harmful and pointless. He said, avoid these 2 extremes. Follow the middle way, which leads to vision, knowledge.com, insight, and peace. That middle way became embodied in the Noble Eightfold Path, balancing wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. What the middle way teaches, right view and intention, seeing truth without distortion, letting compassion be the only motive, right speech, action, and livelihood, neither silence out of fear nor constant talk, neither harm nor passivity, right effort, mindfulness, and concentration, not forcing practice, not neglecting it, but steady, gentle cultivation. Each step avoids extremes, neither adhering to rigid austerity nor sinking into chaos. It is the soundless tuning of a lute. Too tight, it snaps. Too loose, it sings no note. Balanced, it resonates beautifully. Modern reflections, many who encounter the middle way today misunderstand it as complacency or worse, extremism retrospectively. In our world, one practitioner noted, self-indulgence is so normalized that true balance seems radical. But the middle way is neither more nor less than choosing presence over reaction, wisdom over compulsion. Your own practice of balance. Pause. Now, feel your breath. Notice the edge between thought and silence. That edge is your path. Ask silently, am I leaning toward craving pleasure to soothe the wound, or pushing myself too hard, hoping to earn worth through suffering? Let your answer rest. In your heart, without judgment, guided practice. Inhale deeply for counts. Open presence. Exhale fully 6 counts. Release effort. Repeat with awareness, turning to body, breath, mind. Hold the awareness of balance, neither forcing nor denying. Simply resting. Stories echoing the middle win. The Kakanagata Sutta, the Buddha, revealed that the middle way avoids the extremes of existence and non-existence, the extreme metaphysical views that trap the mind. True liberation comes through dependent origination. Nagarjuna later taught this as the ultimate middle way, practicing emptiness in both thought and existence, recognizing the fluidity of reality beyond dualism. Inner reflection, the path you walk. Feel again. You are neither enslaved to desire nor crushed by denial. You walk the middle path when you breathe compassion, act with ethics, and rest in clarity. This is your lineage, not inherited, but remembered. This is your awakening, not earned, but uncovered. Closing peaceful benediction, the middle way is not passive. It is vibrant balance. It is not compromise. It is freedom from extremes. It is the clarity that arises when effort meets ease. It is the peace that lives beyond craving and aversion. May this story guide you into deeper equanimity. May you walk your days with balance, neither grasping nor fleeing. May you cultivate balanced love, balanced speech, balanced being. And as you rest now, know that awakening is not distant. It is the quiet harmony of your breath, the steady beat of your heart, the luminous presence that dwells between thoughts. That is the middle way. Part 5. The Bodhi Tree, the final Vijuin. The heart breaks free and awakens under silent canopy, opening, stillness before dawn, beneath the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya. Under a sky so vast, the stars felt like silent sentinels. Siddhartha Gautama sat in unwavering presence. This was no ordinary seat, it was the Vajrasana, the diamond throne etched in stone beneath the tree where countless pilgrims now bow in quiet devotion. He had already discarded extremes, neither palace luxury nor ascetic suffering. Now he vowed to hold vigil not for comfort, but for truth itself. The vow that echoes through time as twilight deepened into night. Siddhartha made a solemn vow, though my flesh and nerves and bones might collapse, yet I will not rise from this seat until I have awakened fully, or died trying, under the Bodhi tree, a sacred ficus religiosa. He remained undisturbed. Night turned to deep night. The forest watched. The earth held him. The breeze seemed to whisper encouragement. Watch 1. Memories of past lives in the first watch of the night. The Buddha found clarity. His mind dissolved into stillness. He saw countless past lives, his own rebirths through cyclic existences. He witnessed patterns of karma, actions, consequences, cycles of birth and death. The illusions of identity fell away into clarity of interconnectedness. Each life was a thread in the endless tapestry of samsara. This was not merely was realization. Suffering had a pattern. There was a cause. Watch 2. Understanding karma and liberation as darkness gave way to deeper awareness. The second watch revealed the structure of suffering. Siddhartha saw clearly how craving, attachment, and ignorance perpetuated cycle upon cycle. He perceived the law of karma, how actions shape rebirth, how intention molds destiny. Simultaneously, he glimpsed the possibility of freedom mercy for beings bound by their past choices. In this clarity, he gained deep compassion, not pity, but understanding of suffering's architecture. In that dawn, an infinite peace dawned. Within him, the Mara trials. Illusion meets clarity yet. The night was not peaceful. Mara, the demon of desire and illusion, rose to challenge him. Fantasies of pleasure, armies of fear, twin daughters of seduction, they all attempted to unseat his resolve. Siddhartha remained unchanged. With composed mind, he touched the earth as witness to his merit. I call the earth to bear witness. To my accumulation of wisdom and compassion, Mara recoiled. Siddhartha remained seated, whole. He had transcended both forms of illusion, craving, and fear. His stillness had conquered Mara. Protection. The first blessing. Some traditions recount that after awakening, pouring rain and thunderclouds gathered around Buddha. At that moment, Mukulenda, the Serpent King, when the storm cleared, the Naga bowed and disappeared, but his gift of protection remained a symbol that even nature seemed to honor awakening's completion. This ancient story reminds us that true peace may appear vulnerable, but it is met by compassion, even from unexpected guardians. Symbolism of the Bodhi tree of awakening became sacred not for its species, but for its witness. Standing in silence, it felt the vow, the vigil, the transformation. Its heart-shaped leaves seemed to echo the awakened heart. Today, pilgrims flock to Bodh Gaya, where a descendant tree stands from around the time of Emperor Ashoka, sat unmoving until awakening came. Across centuries, attempts to destroy the tree storms, jealous rulers only led to its replanting. The Bodhi tree has been chopped down and reborn again and again. Mirroring the resurrection of awakening in the human heart, inner reflection. Vigil of the heart, sit quietly now and breathe deeply. Imagine yourself seated under the Bodhi tree. Feel earth beneath your sitting, bones solid, alive. Feel your breath steady, rhythmic like a silent drum of presence. Visualize the vigil, the 3 watches, the trials, the dawn. Allow your mind to soften her, not by effort, but by observation. Know that your longings, doubts, fears, and insights are your own vigil. You need not sit for 49 days. It is being. Now, guided meditation, pause, inhale. In front, exhale, feel weight grounding in earth beneath. Observe your mind, memories, thoughts, dreams like leaves drifting on a stream. Do not chase them, do not fight them. Let them pass. Hold stillness as your refuge. Let clarity rise naturally. From your waiting, closing. The awakening in Yuan Siddhartha rose at dawn. He did not wear a halo, he wore ordinary robes. His body remained the same, but his heart had shifted irrevocably. His awakening was invisible, but immeasurable. Thousands of years later, his vigil continues not beneath one tree, but in every heart that wakes up to presence, compassion, and clarity. May this story fold softly around you. May your breath become the vigil beneath your own Bodhi tree. May your heart awaken here. Now, rest in peace, rest in presence. You are the awakening. You are the Bodhi tree. Part 6. The teaching begins. Turning the wheel of Dharma, the heart whispers truth, and the Dharma begins its journey, opening reflection in the gentle dawn after the night of awakening. A great stillness cloaked the world. Under the Bodhi tree, the Siddhartha who sat had been reborn as the Buddha, awakened one carrying insight too profound to keep silent. But awakening, he understood, was not destination, it was invitation. He felt the call to teach not as doctrine, but as compassionate guidance for all beings. So he rose, walked toward Sarnath, and at the dear Parched gathered the 5 ascetics who had once shared his austerities. They eyed him suspiciously. He seemed well nourished, as if he had abandoned the quest. But as he spoke, their skepticism melted into recognition. The setting. Deer Park, at Sarnath Place, where this teaching unfolded, is now the site of the Dhammic Stupa, standing tall where the wheel of Dharma was first set in motion. There, deer roam, freely echoing the peaceful coexistence initiated by this first teaching at Meghdava. The deer forest sanctuary, the 5 monks Kandanga, Asaji Badia, Vapa, and Mahanamasat, before him. They had left when he rejected asceticism. Now they saw him radiant. He began not with persuasion, but with clarity. Introducing the middle way, the Buddha began by naming the 2 extremes he once practiced: sensual indulgence, the low path of ordinary beings; self-mortification, extreme asceticism that brought pain but no awakening. Instead, he invited them to the middle way, a balanced path that leads to wisdom, ethics, and peace. It was a path discovered through his own journey of extremes and renunciation. He said, I teach the middle way, which avoids those 2 extremes and opens the path to vision, knowledge, calm, insight, and peace. The 4 Noble Truths, the core of the teaching was the 4 Noble Truths, delivered not as dogma, but as lived insight. Dukkha, life in conditioned form, is marked by dissatisfaction, aging, illness, and death. Samudaya, craving, attachment, and ignorance give rise to suffering. Nirodha, magga, the path to ending suffering, is the Noble Eightfold Path itself. Asterisk, when he spoke these truths, and Kandunga the first of the five saw the teaching clearly. His Dhamma eye opened to the nature of origination and cessation. He became the first awakened disciple, the first to enter the stream of liberation. Asterisk, the Noble Eightfold Path beneath the Bodhi tree in Sarnath, the Buddha laid out the map. For spiritual transformation, wisdom pan bright view, seeing reality as it is, in impermanence and interconnection. Right intention, cultivating love without grip, goodwill without expectation, ethical conducts, skla, right speech, truthful, kind, non-harmful words. Right action, ethical deeds, rooted in compassion. Right livelihood, simple work, in alignment with integrity, mental discipline, samdhi right effort, cultivating wholesome states, transforming habits. Right mindfulness, present awareness of body, mind, and feelings. Right concentration, deep meditative focus, arising from calm awareness. Asterisk, this path, he explained, from fear to freedom, asterisk, the wheel turns. Divine acknowledgement, as the teaching concluded, something extraordinary rippled through the cosmos. Earth spirit deities proclaimed, near Varanasi, at this deer park, the supreme wheel of Dharma has been set in motion. It cannot be turned back by recluses, Brahmins, gods, Mara, or anyone at all in the world. Asterisk, their cry reached devas in countless realms, from the four kings to the Brahma worlds. A cosmic tremor heralded the Dharma's first turning, and the Sangha, the spiritual community, was born. Asterisk, emergence of the Sanghaith five ascetics, now awakened, became the first monastic disciples. The inaugural Their liberation marked the completion of the triple gem, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. The Dharma wheel had begun to turn not as a grand ceremony, but as living truth offered to those who could hear and awaken themselves in a reflection. Your own wheel-turning pause now. Feel your breath. Imagine the scene in Deer Park 5 Seekers, before the awakened one, the wheel of Dharma beginning to spin. Ask within, can you feel suffering not as calamity, but as a teacher? Can you sense the cause-subtle craving or fear? Can you glimpse its cessation piece beyond thought? Can you hear in your life the echo of the Eightfold Patha map whispered in your breath? This isn't philosophy. It is recognition. It is the turning of your own inner wheel. When understanding arises and insight lands, guided pause and wordless listening, inhale gently. Presence arises. Exhale deeply. Tension dissolves. Hold mental space open. Watch thoughts, feelings, sensations as visitors, not masters. Let the truths resonate. Suffering, cause, cessation, path. Sit in spacious clarity, your own wheel turning. Softly. Closing reflection, the Deer Park sermon was not the end. It was the beginning, the wheel turning not for eternity, but in every moment of awareness, the middle way, the Four Noble Truths. And the Eightfold Path are not ancient doctrines. They are living maps. Each breath can carry them. Each choice can enact them. When you pause, take refuge. Act with kindness. Speak truth. Hold awareness, your wheel turns. Dharma awakens again. So rest now. Let your mind settle. Let the teaching become silence within you, and know the wheel of Dharma turns through you in this breath, in this moment. Tonight, allow the world to fall away. Set down your burdens. Close the door behind the day. The noise can wait. The stress can fade. For now, only peace remains. You've come to a place of deep stillness, where stories from long ago carry timeless truths, truths that soothe the mind, soften the heart, and lead you home. To the place within that cannot be disturbed. This is a story about anger, but more importantly, about the freedom of not accepting it. Let the gentle rhythm of this tale guide you. Let your breath deepen. Let your body settle. And let your awareness open like a lotus flower, slowly unfolding in moonlight. Part 1. a walk beneath the banyan, the ancient land of Magadha. When the forests still breathed with sages and the rivers whispered to wandering monks, there lived a man consumed by fire, not the fire of the hearth, but the fire of anger. His name is not remembered, for he never wished to be part of the teachings. But his story, like a pebble tossed into a still pond, left ripples that echoed through time. This man had heard of the Buddha, the awakened one who walked barefoot through villages, followed by monks in silence who taught peace where there was war and compassion where there was cruelty. But the man did not believe in peace. He believed in power, in strength, in vengeance, and most of all, in his rightness. To him, peace was weakness. Silence was surrender. Compassion was for the defeated. And so, when word came that the Buddha would be passing through the village of Nalanda, the man prepared not with reverence, but with rage. Part 2. The meeting on a warm afternoon, as birds sang in the banyan. Trees and the dust of the earth swirled gently under the feet of pilgrims. The Buddha entered the village. He walked calmly with a robe the color of saffron. His steps were silent. His eyes were soft. Behind him followed a line of monks, heads shaved, eyes lowered, each carrying a bowl and a heart full of devotion. The angry man stood near the well, arms crossed, waiting as the Buddha approached. The man shouted, "You speak of peace while fools suffer. You speak of compassion. But what good is softness in a world of beasts? You deceive the weak. You poison the minds of our children with passivity." The village went silent. A few gasped. A few turned away. But the Buddha did not. He looked upon the man, not with defense, not with judgment, but with presence. And then, the angry man stepped closer, face flushed, and spat a string of insults, cruel, cutting, fierce. Yet the Buddha remained still. Finally, after the man had exhausted his rage, his voice trembling and sweat on his brow, the Buddha spoke. His voice was gentle, without mockery or pride. "If you offer a gift to someone," he said, "and they do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man blinked, caught off guard. His mind searched for a reason. "To the one who offered it," he replied. The Buddha smiled softly. "Then I do not accept your anger." Part 3. The unbroken mirror. For a long moment, silence wrapped the crowd like mist. The angry man stared, as if expecting retaliation, perhaps even hoping for it. But it never came. Instead, the Buddha bowed his head with grace and walked on. The man stood alone now, but something within him had shifted. The rage that once felt righteous now felt heavy, sticky. It clung to him, but it no longer found a home outside him. The Buddha had not fought it. He had not returned it. He had not even flinched. He had reflected it, like a calm lake reflects the sky. That night, the man did not sleep. He thought of the Buddha's eyes, still like a deep well. He thought of his own heart, how it had twisted, burned, recoiled, and how the Buddha's had not. The next morning, he did not go to the market. He walked to the forest. Part 4. The Returnender, the tall shade of sal trees. The Buddha sat surrounded by disciples. He was teaching, not with scripture, but with silence. A few words, a gesture, a breath. The man approached, but he did not shout this time. He bowed low, forehead to earth, and said, "I came to defeat you with words, but I found no enemy." The Buddha opened his eyes and nodded, as if he had known. "All along you battled only your own reflection," he said, "and you are free now if you choose to lay down the sword." Part 5. The nature of Androlet. Us pause here, dear listener, and breathe together, inhale and exhale. Let us reflect on what this story teaches us. Anger is like a package. When someone offers it through cruel words, gestures, or judgments, they are handing you a wrapped box. You have the choice to take it and carry it, to unwrap it and suffer its contents, or to leave it unopened, untouched, and return to peace. The Buddha did not suppress his reaction. He transcended the need to react. He did not accept what was not his. He did not absorb the poison. He simply allowed the offering to pass through like wind through empty space. This is the art of inner sovereignty. This is the freedom of non-reaction. This is what it means to live awake. Part 6. Practical. Reflections let us bring this story into your life, gently. Think of a time when someone's words burned you. Where did that flame settle? In your chest, your face, your breath. Now ask, did I have to take that flame? Could I have let it burn out on its own, like a match in the rain? Every time someone attacks, they are revealing their own pain, are not their pain. You are not their story. You are the space in which it echoes, or the silence in which it dissolves. When you stop receiving what is toxic, the giver is left only with themselves, and sometimes that is enough for their awakening to begin. Part 7. A blessing of peace, now dear soul. As you rest in this moment, allow yourself to feel what the Buddha felt. Stillness, spaciousness, the gentle refusal to carry. What was never yours, may your body be free of tension. May your heart be light. May your mind be clear and vast. Like the morning sky, when anger knocks at your door, pause. You do not have to open it. You do not have to host it. You can simply breathe. And B, let this story stay with you, like a lantern in the dark. And remember, peace is not the absence of insult. Peace is the refusal to carry insult into your soul. You are free to return to yourself, to the calm within, to the unshakable stillness of your true nature. Sleep now or sit in gentle meditation. Either way, the Buddha walks beside you. Tonight, let yourself rest. Let the burdens of the day slowly loosen their grip. Let the mind untangle its knots. Let the heart, yes, even the heart, soften. Just for now, in this gentle space, we offer you a story, a sacred, timeless story from the Buddhist tradition, a story of grief, a story of love, and a story of letting go. It is said that the Buddha once met a mother whose soul was shrouded in sorrow. A sorrow so deep, it echoed beyond her cries. Her name was Kisagatami, and her grief would become the doorway to a truth that all of us must one day face. And, through compassion, learn to live with. Take a breath now. Let this story unfold, like the petals of a lotus opening at dawn. The cry that would not end long ago in the city of Savatthi, there lived a woman named Kisagatami. She was kind, humble, and full of gentle joy. For many years, her life passed like a quiet river, steady, simple, and untroubled. And then, one spring, her child was born, a son, a beautiful boy with eyes like stars reflected in a still lake. He became her world. Every morning she would sing to him, rock him, feed him with her hands, and dream of his future. But life, as we all come to learn, is not bound by our dreams. It is bound by impermanence, the silent, ceaseless river of change. One morning her son fell ill, and by evening he had taken his last breath in her arms. Just like that, the song stopped, the river froze. The stars in her eyes went dark. She wailed, she screamed, she shook the heavens with her grief. And then, she did something most of us cannot imagine. Part 2. Carrying the body in a state between madness and sorrow. Kisagatami picked up the lifeless body of her son. Not believe he was gone. She believed that someone could save him, that someone could bring him back. So she wandered through the city, carrying the small body in her arms like a mother cradling sleep. She knocked on every door, pleading, "My child has fallen ill. Please, give me a medicine, anything to bring him back. I will pay you. I will serve you. Just please. Save my child." But every door she knocked on closed gently in sorrow. Some wept, some turned away, and others offered comfort, but no cure still. She would not let go. Grief had taken her hostage. Her love, pure and fierce, had nowhere to go. And so she kept searching until one day a kind elder, seeing the storm in her soul, whispered, go to the Buddha. They say he has medicine for every kind of suffering. Part 3. The Buddha's instruction and, so barefoot and trembling, Kisagotami walked to the Jetavana Grove, where the Buddha was teaching under a great Bodhi tree. The monks stepped aside as she approached for sorrow. When true carries a force no man can deny, she knelt before the Buddha, tears streaming, clutching the tiny body to her chest. "Blessed One," she begged, "you are the enlightened one. You understand life and death. Please, you must have something, anything, to bring him back." The Buddha looked at her, not with pity, not with detachment, but with presence, full, quiet, and compassionate. He did not speak for some time, and then he said softly, "Yes, Kisagotami, there is a cure." Her eyes lit up. "Bring me a single mustard seed," he said, "from a household that has never known death." A simple task, she thought. Surely such a house must exist. She bowed, hope swelling in her chest, and rushed back into the city. Part 4. The search for the seed. From house to house, she searched again, this time not for a cure, but for a seed, a single mustard seed from a home untouched by death. At the first door, she asked. The woman nodded, went to fetch a seed, but paused, and said gently, "We lost our daughter last winter." Kisa bowed. She could not take it. At the next house they had lost a father, the next a grandmother, the next a husband, the next an infant, just like her own. House by house, story by story. She began to see something behind every smile, a scar behind every hearth, a memory behind every life. A death. She no longer cried in desperation. She listened. She sat with the mothers, the widows, the orphans. She heard their pain. She saw her reflection in every face, and slowly, the sharp edges of her grief began to soften, not disappear, but soften, like a stone made smooth by the river's endless embrace. Part 5. The realization. By dusk, she stood at the edge of the village, her arms empty now. She had not found a single house untouched by death, and yet she was no longer hollow. Something inside her had awakened. Grief had not vanished, but it had been transformed. From isolation to compassion, from madness to wisdom, from a private wound to a shared understanding. She returned to the Buddha, bowed low, and said, "I see now, no house is free from death. No one escapes sorrow, but in our shared suffering, there is also a shared light." The Buddha smiled. "You are not alone, Kisagotami, in grief. You sought to bring him back, but in compassion, you brought yourself back." Part VI. A teaching for all beings. Let us breathe now, dear listener, gently, in and out. This story is not only about a mother. It is about all of us, because at some point, we all carry something we cannot bear to lose. A loved one, a dream, a version of ourselves. And when loss comes, as it always will, we resist, we deny, we beg the world to make it right. But grief is not a punishment. It is not a failure. It is love, surviving its object, and love does not die. Part 7. Compassion. The balm of the heart in the Buddhist path. Grief is not an enemy. It is a teacher. It shows us impermanence. It opens the heart. It humbles the ego. But it is compassion, the warm, quiet balm that allows the heart to heal. When Kisagotami listened to the sorrow of others, she did not get over her pain. She entered into the great human family. She became part of the Sangha, the community of all who know love and loss. And this is the secret. The moment we stop resisting grief and start holding it in compassion, it becomes not a weight, but a bridge. Part 8. A blessing for the broken-hearted. You too have loved and lost. If you have cried in the dark, if your heart has broken and you have wandered, asking why, then let this story wrap around you like a shawl of truth. You are not alone. Every life touches death. Every love endures grief. But every sorrow, too, carries within it the seed of awakening. You may not be able to bring the past back, But you can bring your soul back gently, slowly, in kindness. Let yourself feel it. Let yourself heal it. Let yourself hold the hands of others who know the same path. This is the way of the Buddha. This is the wisdom of Kisagatami, and this is the tender light of compassion. Part 9. Closing reflection as you rest now, perhaps with tears, perhaps with silence. Know this, grief is not a detour from the spiritual path, it is the path. In every loss, you are invited back to presence. In every sorrow, you are shown what matters most. And in every story like this one, may you find the peace that endures even through pain. Tonight, may your heart be held, may your breath be steady, may your dreams be filled with comfort, not fear. And may you remember, even in darkness, that the seed of healing is already within you. Sleep now, dear soul. The Buddha watches. The stars keep their vigil. And your heart is still capable of infinite love. The bamboo and the Rivera Zen parable for flexibility, surrender, and peace. Gentle flute begins. Soft water flowing in the background. Welcome, dear listener. Tonight we walk the slow path, the path of stillness, silence, and surrender, a place where rushing ends and resting begins. You have wandered through storms today. Perhaps the wind pushed too hard. Perhaps the world asked too much. But here, you are safe. Let the breath become your boat. Let the story become your river. And let the wisdom of bamboo, yes, simple, silent bamboo, show you what the wind cannot break. This is a story from Zen. It is not loud, it is not complex. But if you listen not only with the mind, but with the heart, it may touch something timeless within you. Part 1. The Student and the Winden, a quiet monastery hidden. Deep within a forest of cedars and pine, there lived a young Zen student named Renji. He was earnest and disciplined. He woke before the sun, swept the floors with reverence, prepared tea with attention, and bowed deeply at every bell. But inside, Renji was not at peace. His mind was a storm, constantly chasing questions. What is enlightenment? When will I awaken? How can I silence my thoughts? How can I become like my master? He asked the trees, the scriptures, and the silence of the meditation hall. But no answer satisfied him. One day after morning meditation, Renji approached his master, a soft-spoken monk named Ryokan, known for smiling more than speaking. They walked together to the edge of the monastery, where tall bamboo swayed beside a river. Renji bowed deeply and asked, "Master, what is enlightenment?" Ryokan paused. The breeze moved his robe. He turned and asked, "What do you see when you look at the bamboo?" Renji looked. The bamboo bent in the wind, gracefully, silently, but did not break. It swayed side to side, but stayed rooted. Its slender body followed the rhythm of the wind, he said. It is bending, flowing with the wind. It does not resist, Ryokan smiled. He placed his palm gently on the trunk and said, "That is enlightenment." Part 2. Lessons from bamboo. They sat beside the river, the master and his student in the temple of earth and sky. "Master," said Renji, "how can I become like bamboo? How can I flow when my mind clings to everything? I want to be still, but my thoughts are like wild rivers." Ryokan nodded and pointed to the bamboo. "Do you see it grasping the wind? Do you see it fighting the rain? It bends, not because it is weak, but because it is strong enough to surrender. The bamboo does not argue with the storm, it dances with it." Renji listened. "But what about its roots?" he asked. "If it surrenders to everything, why does it not fall?" The master smiled again. "Because surrender does not mean drifting. It means trusting. Its roots go deep. That is why it does not fear the wind." And so, under the shade of the bamboo, Renji began to understand. Flexibility was not weakness. Stillness was not stagnation. And peace did not come from control, but from trust. Part 3. The River of Life. That evening, as the sun poured gold into the river, The master took Renji to the water's edge. "Tell me," Ryokan said, "what does the river teach?" Renji watched the current. "It moves," he said, "always moving. But it does not try, it just flows. And when it meets a rock," asked Ryokan, "it goes around it. And when it falls from a great height, it becomes a waterfall. Does it break?" "No," said Renji. "It becomes mist, and then returns to the river again." Ryokan placed his hand on the young monk's shoulder. "Then you understand," he said. "Enlightenment is not escape from life. It is becoming one with it, like bamboo with the wind, like the river with the rocks. Enlightenment is not a state to reach. It is a way of being with what is." Renji bowed low, his forehead touching the earth. The first tears of peace wet his cheek. Part 4. The storm within. But, as with all stories, there is still a storm to face. A few days later, a messenger arrived at the monastery with word. Renji's village had burned in a wildfire. His family was safe, but his childhood home, the place of his earliest memories, was gone. The young monk trembled. Grief washed over him. His master found him kneeling beside the bamboo fists, clenched eyes filled with rain. "I thought I understood," said Renji. "I thought I was ready to let go, but I am not bamboo. I am breaking." Sat beside him and said nothing. After a long silence, he whispered, "Bamboo bends even in sorrow. Let yourself bend. You do not have to be strong. Let the grief pass through you as the wind through leaves, and trust that your roots will hold." Renji cried. Not the tight, resisting tears of the past, but open, flowing tears, like a river returning to the ocean. Part V. The root of peace. Months passed. The seasons changed, and Renji began to change too. He stopped striving for answers. He stopped forcing stillness. He began to listen. To the wind, the trees, the river, and to his own breath. He still felt sadness. He still had questions, but now he flowed with them, not against them. One morning, a new student arrived and asked him, "What is enlightenment?" Renji smiled and walked with the boy to the grove of bamboo. He pointed and said, "It is like the bamboo bending in the wind, never breaking, always flowing." The boy was silent, and in that silence, the teaching was heard. Part 6. Reflection. For you, dear listener. What storms have shaken your life? What winds have tried to break you? Perhaps you've felt uprooted, tossed about, unsure of your path, but let this story remind you, you are the bamboo. You are allowed to bend. You are allowed to weep. You are allowed to change shape with the seasons and still remain whole. You are not weak for surrendering. You are strong for staying rooted in truth. You are not broken for feeling deeply. You are open, and openness is where wisdom flows. And let go of control. Let go of the belief that you must stand rigid against life. Instead, let yourself dance with the wind, with the river. With the rhythm of now. Part 7. Closing blessing. Now, close your eyes. Imagine a bamboo grove, tall, green, swaying gently in moonlight. The wind comes, but does not break them. The rain falls, but they do not resist. They stand, not in defiance, but in harmony. You too can live this way, with grace, with depth, with quiet strength. Enlightenment is not a destination. It is this moment, lived with surrender and presence. Breathe and let go. You are safe, you are rooted, you are flowing. Sleep now, dear soul. Let the bamboo sing you to rest. Let the river carry you home. A timeless river of compassion in the early morning mist of ancient Jada Grove. The trees whispered softly to the wind, and the silence held the fragrance of sandalwood and blooming safflowers. Among the bamboo and birdsong, there sat a circle of monks around the enlightened one. A golden light bathed the forest, not from the rising sun, but from the stillness of awakened hearts. It was here that a weary traveler arrived, her eyes shadowed by longing, her body thin from the road, but her spirit still burning with one question. Master, what is love that never ends? The Buddha looked at her with infinite calm. then began to speak, not with words alone, but through a story that lived in the hearts of all who heard it. Part I, the prince and the outcast woman long ago, in a kingdom by the river Ganges. There lived a noble prince named Sadaka. Known for his kindness and beauty of spirit, he was loved by all. But despite his royal robes and lotus ponds, his heart felt restless. One day, as he wandered through the city disguised as a simple merchant, he heard crying from a shadowed alley. There, by the steps of an old well, sat a woman in torn clothes. Her face streaked with dust and tears. She was Amba, an outcast, born of the lowest caste, orphaned as a child, and burdened with the scars of life. The prince sat beside her and asked, "Why do you cry?" She didn't answer. Most would have turned away, but he waited, and after a long silence, she said, "I cry because I have no worth in this world. Even the dogs are treated better than me." Sadaka looked into her eyes and saw not filth or disgrace, but fire. The fire of a soul that longed to be seen, to be touched by kindness without fear of punishment. He said softly, "You are not broken. You are unloved, and that is not your fault." Part 2. The river of kindness. In the days that followed, the prince returned each dawn to sit by Amba's side. He brought rice wrapped in banana leaves, stories from the scriptures, and the patience of deep listening. He did not pity her. He respected her. He offered nothing that demanded return. As seasons changed, the city gossiped. How could a royal man sit with an outcast? But the prince said nothing, and Amba, touched for the first time by kindness, began to heal. He taught her to meditate beneath the Nime tree. She learned to breathe in silence and exhale her shame. Her spine straightened, her voice softened. The woman the world had thrown away began to blossom, and one day, as the sun painted gold across the Yamuna River, Amba whispered, "Why do you do this for me? What do you want?" Sadaka smiled. "Nothing," he said. "This is not love that clings. This is love that flows." Part 3. A Trial of Fire. The king eventually discovered the prince's secret visits. Disgraced by what he called an unroyal obsession, he summoned his son before the court. "You will renounce this woman," the king commanded, "or you will lose your inheritance." But the prince said, "I do not need a throne to live with peace. But if I abandon her now, I will lose my soul." In fury, the king cast him out. Homeless now, Sadaka returned to Amba not as a prince, but as a friend, without title or possession. They lived in the forest beside the river. Amba learned the ways of herbs and healing. Sadaka built shelter with his bare hands. Their days were quiet, but full of meaning. They fed beggars, tended to the sick, and shared silence beneath the stars. Part 4. A love that became the world years. Passed, and travelers began to visit them. Word spread that in a forest grove lived two souls who loved without condition, who gave without demand, who healed through their very presence. Among the visitors was a young monk, one who would one day become a great disciple of the Buddha. He asked the couple, "What kind of love is this? You are not husband and wife. You own nothing. Yet the joy here is deeper than gold." Sadaka answered, "True love does not possess. It witnesses, it blesses, it forgives, and it frees." Amba added, "I was once broken. He did not fix me. He saw me, and I became whole." In time, the Buddha himself heard of them and visited the forest. He sat before them, smiled, and said, "You have already walked the path I teach. This is metta, boundless loving kindness. Yours is the love that knows no limits." And so their names became legend, not for romance or power, but for selfless compassion. Part V. When love becomes the path, returning to the woman who asked, "What is love that never ends?" The Buddha concluded, "It is the love that gives without needing reward, that sees suffering and embraces it with presence. It is the love that awakens, not because it desires, but because it understands." The woman bowed, tears in her eyes, not of sorrow, but of recognition. She had been searching for someone to love her. Now she saw. Love was already inside her, waiting to be shared. Closing reflection, your heart is a river, dear listener. Love is not always grand gestures or romantic fables. Sometimes it is the quiet endurance of presence, the offering of a kind word without expectation, the still gaze that sees past anger and into pain. Love without limits is not rare. It is simply forgotten, covered over by fear, greed, and self-interest. But when you return to silence, when you watch the bamboo sway, when you offer your heart like the river gives its water, then you remember, you are love, you are the balm, you are the path. Closing meditation, the love that frees. Close your eyes, sit in stillness, breathe in, and imagine a golden light entering your heart. Breathe out, and let go of anything that asks for reward. Feel the warmth of compassion within your chest. Now, imagine someone who is suffering not far away, but right beside you. Can you offer them your presence? Can you whisper within, I see you, I do not judge. I love you not to possess, but to bless. That is the way of the awakened heart. That is the love that knows no limits. As we come to the gentle close of this journey through the sacred stories of the Buddha, may you feel the soft stirrings of peace blooming within your heart. These stories are not merely parables from a distant past, they are living waters, flowing into our present lives with compassion, clarity, and timeless wisdom. In the stillness of your breath, in the quiet between each word, you may have discovered something deeper than relaxation, the remembrance of your own stillness, the unwavering truth that peace does not need to be earned, but simply returned to. Each tale, whether of anger met with grace, sorrow transformed into insight, or bamboo bending with the river's current, is a doorway, a path inward, a mirror, reflecting your own ability to be tender and strong, to yield and remain rooted, to feel deeply and yet not drowned in the currents of life. Let these stories be your companions on difficult days. Let them sit with you in silence when your heart is heavy, or walk with you in joy when your soul is light. The Buddha's teachings were never meant to be kept on temple walls or bound in scriptures. They are meant to be lived, breathed, and embodied in the way we speak, walk, listen, and love. In this world full of noise, may you always return to the stillness of truth. In the rush of modern life, may you remember the slow breath of awareness. In your moments of doubt, may you recall the stories that whispered, you are not alone. This too is part of the way. And so, with reverence and gratitude, we leave you in a space of inner quiet, a space where wisdom grows, not from effort, but from surrender. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings know the peace of presence. May you walk gently, love openly, and live deeply. This is the path. This is the way.